My name is Daniel, and today I'm going to tell you about the moment I realized my mind had become my prison. Before I go any further, I want to ask you to do something for me. If this story speaks to you, if you recognize yourself in what I'm about to share, please subscribe to this channel, share it with someone who might need to hear these words, and leave a comment telling me about your own struggle with overthinking. Your stories matter, and they remind me I'm not alone in this. I was 28 years old when I finally admitted I had a problem, not with drugs or alcohol or anything society recognizes as an addiction. My problem was my mind. Specifically, I couldn't turn it off. I was a software engineer at a tech startup in Austin, Texas. Good job, decent salary, working on interesting projects, but inside my head was chaos, constant, relentless, exhausting chaos. From the moment I woke up until the moment I finally fell asleep, often hours after going to bed, my thoughts raced, not just thinking, but spiraling. Every conversation I'd had that day replayed and analyzed, every decision I'd made, questioned and second-guessed, every possible scenario for tomorrow, next week, next year, spinning out in endless variations. What if I said the wrong thing in that meeting? What if my code has a bug I didn't catch? What if my manager thinks I'm incompetent? What if I chose the wrong career? What if I'm wasting my life? What if? My girlfriend Maya was the first person to really call me out on it. We'd been together for 2 years, and she'd watched me get progressively worse. One evening we were supposed to be watching a movie, but I was barely paying attention. My mind was somewhere else, replaying a conversation with a coworker, analyzing every word, trying to figure out if I'd said something wrong. "Daniel, you're not even here," Maya said, pausing the movie. "What? I'm right here." "No, you're not. Your body is here, but your mind is somewhere else. It's always somewhere else. You're always thinking about something that happened or something that might happen. You're never just present." "I can't help it. My mind just goes. I can't turn it off." "Have you tried? Have you actually tried to just be here in this moment instead of living in your head?" I wanted to argue with her, to defend myself, but the truth was I hadn't tried. I didn't know how to try. My racing thoughts had become so normal, so constant, that I didn't remember what it was like to have a quiet mind. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. I was working on a critical project, a feature that needed to launch by end of week, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept jumping from task to task, worry to worry, scenario to scenario. I'd start coding one thing, then get distracted by a thought about something else, then remember something I'd forgotten to do yesterday, then worry about a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. By Wednesday, I'd accomplished almost nothing. The feature wasn't close to ready, and I was spiraling into panic. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through everything that could go wrong. I'd miss the deadline. My team would be disappointed. My manager would lose confidence in me. I'd get fired. I wouldn't be able to find another job. I'd disappoint Maya. My life would fall apart. The thoughts came faster and faster, each one feeding the next, until I felt like I was drowning in my own mind. My chest was tight, my breathing shallow. I got out of bed and went to the bathroom, splashing water on my face, trying to calm down. I looked at myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, pale skin, exhausted. I looked like I was sick, but I wasn't physically sick. I was mentally exhausted. My own thoughts were destroying me. "God help me," I whispered. I wasn't particularly religious. I'd grown up going to church with my grandparents occasionally, but I'd never taken it seriously. But in that moment, standing in my bathroom at 3 a.m., drowning in thoughts I couldn't control, I didn't know what else to say. I can't do this anymore. My mind won't stop. I can't think straight. I need help. I stood there in the quiet, not expecting anything, just desperate, broken, at the end of myself. And then something happened. Not a voice, not anything audible. But words came into my mind with a clarity that cut through all the noise. "Your thoughts run, but I bring direction." I stood frozen, those words echoing in my head. "Your thoughts run, but I bring direction." It was simple, but it felt profound. like someone had reached into my chaos and offered me a way out. I grabbed my phone and typed the words in my notes app. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I stared at them for a long time. My thoughts run. That was exactly the problem. They ran and ran and ran, going nowhere, just circling and spiraling and exhausting me. But I bring direction. Direction. Not stopping the thoughts, but directing them. Giving them somewhere to go instead of just running in circles. I didn't fully understand it yet, but something about those words gave me hope. Maybe there was a way to live that wasn't this constant mental chaos. Maybe my mind didn't have to be my enemy. I went back to bed and surprisingly fell asleep almost immediately. When I woke up in the morning, I felt different, not cured, not suddenly peaceful, but different, like something had shifted. At work that day, I found myself thinking about those words. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. Every time my mind started to spiral, and it did multiple times, I'd catch myself and whisper those words. I didn't know what it meant practically, didn't know how to apply it, but just remembering them helped somehow. I managed to focus better that day than I had in weeks. Not perfectly. My thoughts still raced, still jumped around, but I got work done. By Friday, the feature was ready. Not perfect, but functional, good enough. My manager, Steve, pulled me aside after our team meeting. Daniel, I noticed you seem pretty stressed this week. Everything okay? I hesitated. The old Daniel would have said I'm fine and changed the subject, but something made me honest. I've been struggling. My mind races constantly. I overthink everything. It's been affecting my work. Steve nodded thoughtfully. I've noticed you seem distracted sometimes. Have you thought about talking to someone? A therapist? Maybe, I said. I'm trying to figure out what to do about it. Well, let me know if there's anything I can do to help. You're a good engineer, Daniel. But I can tell something's been off lately. That weekend, Maya and I went for a walk in Zilker Park. It was a beautiful October day. Warm but not hot, clear blue sky. As we walked, I tried something I'd never really done before. I tried to just be present, to notice the trees, the people, the dogs playing, to not let my mind run off into analysis and worry. It was harder than I expected. My mind kept wanting to jump to other things. Work problems, things I needed to do, conversations I needed to analyze. But every time I caught myself, I'd remember those words. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. You seem different today, Maya observed after a while. Different how? More here, more present. What changed? I told her about the bathroom moment, about the words that had come to me. She listened without interrupting. Do you think it was real? She asked. Like actually God speaking to you? I don't know, maybe. I've never experienced anything like it, but whether it was God or just my subconscious or whatever, those words helped. They gave me something to hold on to when my mind starts racing. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction, Maya repeated. I like that. It's not saying you won't have thoughts. It's saying they can have direction instead of just running wild. Her insight surprised me. That was exactly what I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. My thoughts weren't going to stop. That wasn't realistic. But maybe they didn't have to run in circles. Maybe they could go somewhere purposeful. That evening I did something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I went online and found a church nearby. Not the big, flashy mega-church, but a smaller community church that met in a renovated warehouse. Their website said they had a service Sunday morning at 10 a.m. I didn't tell Maya I was going. I wasn't sure why I felt compelled to go, just that I did. Sunday morning, I drove to the address and found a space that was surprisingly welcoming. Maybe 100 people gathered in a room with exposed brick and industrial lighting. Contemporary worship music played as people found seats. I sat in the back, feeling out of place. The last time I'd been in a church was probably 10 years ago. But as the service started, I found myself paying attention in a way I never had before. The pastor, a woman in her 40s named Sarah, talked about the Psalms, specifically about David's prayers when he was anxious and overwhelmed. David's mind was racing, she said. He was afraid, stressed, overthinking his circumstances. But he didn't just stay in that mental chaos. He brought it to God. He prayed, and in the praying he found direction. Not always immediate answers, but direction. A way forward. I sat there feeling like she was speaking directly to me. This was exactly what I needed to hear. Not that I wouldn't have racing thoughts, but that I could bring them somewhere. That there was direction available if I asked for it. After the service, I sat in my car for a while, thinking. I pulled up my notes app and added to what I'd written. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. Maybe this is the answer I've been looking for. Not to stop thinking, but to learn how to direct my thoughts instead of letting them run wild. To bring them to someone who can help me make sense of them. I didn't have it all figured out. I didn't know what this journey would look like, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. Hope that my mind didn't have to be my prison. Hope that there was a way to live without constant mental chaos. Hope that someone could bring direction to thoughts that had been running wild for too long. That was the beginning, not of having all the answers, but of realizing I needed help. Not of instantly quieting my mind, but of learning there was someone who could bring order to my mental chaos. If you've read this far, let me ask you, do your thoughts run? Do you find yourself constantly overthinking, analyzing, spiraling? Do you know what it's like to be exhausted by your own mind? Leave a comment and tell me, because I'm learning that we're not meant to navigate this mental chaos alone. And maybe, like me, you need to hear that your racing thoughts can find direction. There's a way forward. I'm just beginning to discover it. The week after that first church visit, I started noticing just how much my racing thoughts controlled my life. It was like I'd been living underwater and suddenly surfaced. I could finally see the extent of the problem. Every conversation, I'd replay it dozens of times. Did I say the right thing? Did they understand what I meant? Did I sound stupid? What did their facial expression mean? Was that comment actually criticism disguised as a joke? Every email I sent at work, I'd reread multiple times before hitting send, then immediately regret it and wish I'd worded it differently. I'd check my inbox obsessively, anxious about responses, analyzing every word people wrote back. Every decision, no matter how small, became a major deliberation. What to eat for lunch, which route to take home, whether to respond to a text now or later. My mind would generate endless pros and cons, potential outcomes, hypothetical scenarios. By the time I made a decision, I was exhausted. Maya noticed I was noticing. One evening, as I was spiraling about whether to accept an invitation to a co-worker's birthday party, she said, "You're doing it again, overthinking something that doesn't need this much thought." But what if I go and it's awkward? Or what if I don't go and they think I don't care about the team? Or what if... "Daniel," she interrupted gently, "your thoughts are running. Do you remember what you said about bringing direction?" I stopped mid-spiral. She was right. My thoughts were running, racing through every possible scenario, every potential outcome, every worry and concern. But they weren't going anywhere, just circles. "I don't know how to bring direction," I admitted. "I don't know what that means, practically. Maybe start by asking. You said those words felt like they came from God. So ask God to bring direction instead of letting your thoughts just run." It seemed almost too simple. But that night, when my mind started racing again about the party, and then about work, and then about whether Maya was upset with me, and then about a dozen other things, I tried something new. I stopped and said, out loud in my empty apartment, "God, my thoughts are running. I need direction. What actually matters here?" I sat in the quiet, not really expecting anything. But slowly a clarity came. Not a voice, not words like before, but a sense of knowing. The party didn't matter that much either way. Go if I wanted to connect with co-workers. Don't go if I needed rest. Either choice was fine. I was overthinking something that genuinely wasn't that significant. The relief was immediate. Not because the right answer appeared, but because I realized most of what I was agonizing over didn't need that much mental energy. My thoughts had been running, but they'd been running toward problems that didn't exist. I texted my co-worker that I'd come to the party for an hour or so. Decision made. Mind quiet. That Sunday I went back to the church. Maya came with me this time, curious about the place that had spoken to me the week before. Pastor Sarah's message was about the difference between wisdom and worry, how wisdom looks ahead and makes plans, but worry just spins in circles, creating anxiety. The mind is a gift from God, she said. Thinking, analyzing, problem-solving, these are good things. But when our thoughts become a treadmill, we can't get off. When thinking becomes chronic overthinking, we need to learn to redirect, to bring our racing minds to God and ask for His direction. After the service, I found myself approaching Pastor Sarah. Maya hung back, giving me space, but I could tell she was watching. "Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm new here. This is actually only my second time." "Welcome, Daniel. What brought you in?" I told her briefly about the racing thoughts, the exhaustion, the bathroom moment, the words I'd heard. She listened with genuine attention, not rushing me or looking distracted. "That's a powerful word God gave you," she said when I finished. "Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. Have you been trying to apply it?" "A little, but honestly, I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get direction for my thoughts. They just go and go." "Can I suggest something? We have a Tuesday evening group that meets here. It's called Renewed Mind. It's for people who struggle with anxiety, overthinking, mental health stuff. It's not therapy, but it's a space where people learn to apply faith to their thought patterns. I think you'd fit right in." I hesitated. Joining a group meant admitting I had a problem, meant being vulnerable with strangers, but it also meant not being alone in this. "Okay, yeah, I'll come." "Tuesday night, 7 p.m, just show up. No sign-up required." That Tuesday, I walked into a room where about 15 people sat in a circle. Mix of ages, mix of backgrounds, all looking like regular people. A guy who looked about my age, wearing a tech company t-shirt, waved me to an empty chair. Pastor Sarah opened the meeting. "We're going to continue our series on taking thoughts captive. Who wants to share how this week went with practicing the pause?" A woman in her 30s raised her hand. "I tried it. When I caught myself spiraling about my daughter's behavior at school, I paused. I asked myself, is this thought true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary right now?" And honestly, most of what I was thinking was none of those things, just worry spinning out. A man across the circle nodded. "Same. I was catastrophizing about a medical test result I'm waiting for, making up entire scenarios about what it might be, how I'd handle it, what would happen to my family. When I paused and asked those questions, I realized I was torturing myself about something that hadn't even happened yet." The guy in the tech shirt spoke up. "I'm realizing most of my overthinking is about things I can't control, replaying conversations I can't change, worrying about people's opinions I can't manage. It's exhausting because I'm trying to solve problems that don't have solutions or aren't actually problems." I felt seen. These people were describing my exact experience. Pastor Sarah turned to me. "Daniel, you're new. Want to introduce yourself?" "I'm Daniel. I'm a software engineer. And my mind, it doesn't stop. It races constantly, analyzing everything, worrying about everything, replaying everything. I'm exhausted all the time." "Welcome," several people said at once. "What brought you here?" Pastor Sarah asked. I told them about the bathroom moment, about the words I'd received. Several people nodded like they understood. The tech shirt guy said, "I'm Mark. I'm a programmer too. And yeah, I think our brains are wired for this kind of overthinking. We're paid to think through every edge case, every possible bug, every scenario. But we can't turn that off. We apply that same exhaustive analysis to everything in life." "That's exactly it," I said, feeling relieved that someone understood. "I approach my entire life like it's code I need to debug. But life isn't code. There isn't always one right answer or a perfect solution." Pastor Sarah smiled. "That's a profound insight, Daniel. And it's going to be part of your journey, learning when to think deeply and when to let go. learning the difference between productive thinking and mental spinning. Over the next hour, we talked about practical strategies. The pause, stopping when you notice your thoughts racing and asking if they're true, helpful or necessary. The redirect, when thoughts start spiraling, consciously turning them towards something true or productive. The release, identifying thoughts you can't do anything about and actively choosing to let them go. But what struck me most was the prayer at the end. Pastor Sarah led us in praying specifically about our thought patterns, asking God to help us recognize when our thoughts were running wild and to bring His direction instead. It felt different from any prayer I'd ever prayed, specific, honest, practical. After the meeting, Mark approached me. "Hey, want to grab coffee? I'd love to connect with another engineer who gets this." We went to a coffee shop down the street. Mark was 32, worked at a different tech company, and had been dealing with overthinking for years. "What helped you?" I asked. "I mean, you're still in the group, so I assume you're still working on it, but have you made progress?" "Yeah, actually. A lot of progress. 2 years ago, I was where you are. Barely sleeping, constant mental exhaustion, feeling like a prisoner in my own head. Now, I still have racing thoughts sometimes, but I know what to do with them. I don't just let them run anymore." "How?" "I learned to catch them early. The moment I notice my mind starting to spiral, I pause. I literally say out loud, 'These thoughts are running. God, I need direction.' And then I ask myself, what's actually true here? What can I control? What do I need to do right now? Not tomorrow, not in 5 hypothetical scenarios, but right now. Usually the answer is nothing or something simple, and that helps me let go." But what about the important stuff?" I asked. "What about when you actually do need to think through something carefully?" That's the key, learning the difference between productive thinking and anxious spinning. Productive thinking has a purpose and an endpoint. You think through a problem, come to a decision or a plan, and then you're done. Anxious spinning has no end point. It just loops and loops, creating more anxiety without solving anything. His words resonated. I'd been spinning, not thinking productively, running in place mentally instead of actually moving forward. "Can I ask you something?" Mark said. "Do you journal?" "No. Why?" "It helps. A lot. When your thoughts are racing, write them down. Get them out of your head onto paper. Then you can see them more objectively, can sort through what's actually important versus what's just mental noise. I journal every morning, just 10 minutes. Dump out whatever's in my head. It's like cleaning out the clutter so I can think clearly the rest of the day." I went home that night and tried it, opened my laptop and just started typing everything that was in my head. Work worries, relationship thoughts, random observations, things I needed to do, things I was anxious about. I didn't edit or organize, just typed. 15 minutes later, I stopped and read what I'd written, and I realized something profound. At least half of what was taking up space in my mind was completely trivial. Worries about things that didn't matter, thoughts about situations I couldn't change, analysis of conversations that were over and done. Seeing it written out made it obvious how much mental energy I was wasting. I deleted the document. I didn't need to keep it, but the exercise had done what Mark said it would. My mind felt clearer, less cluttered. Over the next few days, I practiced everything I'd learned. When my thoughts started racing, I'd pause and ask, is this true? Is it helpful? Is it necessary right now? When I caught myself overthinking a decision, I'd pray, God, my thoughts are running. What actually matters here? When I lay in bed unable to sleep because my mind wouldn't stop, I'd journal until the clutter cleared. It wasn't magic. I didn't suddenly have a quiet mind. But I was learning to recognize when my thoughts were just running versus when they were going somewhere purposeful. I was learning to redirect instead of just letting my mind spiral. Maya noticed the difference within a week. "You seem calmer," she said one evening, "like you're not as much in your head." "I'm trying, learning to catch my thoughts when they start racing. It's harder than I expected, but I can already tell it's helping. I'm proud of you." for getting help, for trying something different. I know it's not easy for you. That weekend, I went back through my notes app, where I'd first typed those words. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I added to it. Direction doesn't mean my thoughts stop running. It means they run towards something purposeful instead of just in circles. It means I learn to distinguish between productive thinking and anxious spinning. It means I bring my racing mind to God and ask Him to help me see what actually matters versus what's just noise. I was beginning to understand this wasn't about stopping my thoughts. That wasn't realistic for someone with a mind like mine. This was about learning to direct them, to channel the energy of my thinking toward what was true, what was helpful, what was necessary, and to release the rest. It was just the beginning. I had so much more to learn. But for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just drowning in my own thoughts. I had tools, I had community, I had someone who could bring direction when my mind wanted to just run wild, and that made all the difference. 3 weeks into this new way of thinking, or rather this new way of managing my thinking, I faced my first real test. Not at work, not with Maya, but with something I'd been avoiding for years, my family. My mum called on a Wednesday evening. Daniel, your father and I are coming to Austin next weekend. We'd love to see you. Maybe you could show us around. We could have dinner. My immediate reaction was a flood of thoughts, a tidal wave of them. What will they think of my apartment? Will they ask about my career progress? Will Mom interrogate me about Maya? Will Dad make those comments about me not having my life together? What if they're disappointed in me? What if I say the wrong thing? What if the visit is awkward and tense like it always is? Daniel, are you there? Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that sounds good. Let me know when you get in. After we hung up, I felt my chest tightening. My parents weren't bad people. They loved me in their own way, but our relationship was complicated. They had expectations I'd never quite met. My dad was a doctor, my mom a lawyer. They'd always assumed I'd go into medicine or law. When I chose computer science, they'd been supportive, but clearly disappointed. And they had a way of asking questions that felt like judgments. Still at that startup really meant, when are you going to get a stable job? You and Maya still together? Really meant, when are you getting married? How's the apartment? Really meant, are you finally adulting properly? I felt my thoughts starting to spiral, racing through every possible conversation, every potential criticism, every way the weekend could go wrong. I'd replay past visits, analyzing things they'd said, imagining their inner thoughts about me, catastrophizing about future comments they might make. Then I caught myself. My thoughts were running hard, running fast, running into territory that wasn't helpful or productive. I needed direction. I sat down on my couch and actually said out loud, God, my thoughts are running. About my parents' visit, about all the ways it could go wrong, about feeling like I'm not enough for them. I need direction. What's actually true here? I sat in the quiet practicing what I'd learned at the Renewed Mind group. What was actually true? True, my parents were coming to visit. True, they loved me, even if they didn't always show it well. True, I couldn't control what they thought or said. True, I was an adult making my own choices, and those choices were valid even if they weren't what my parents would have chosen. True, one weekend visit wouldn't define our entire relationship. What was helpful to think about? Helpful, planning some activities they might enjoy. Helpful, preparing myself mentally to respond with grace rather than defensiveness. Helpful, reminding myself that their opinions, while important, didn't determine my worth. Not helpful, imagining every criticism they might make. Not helpful, replaying every awkward conversation from past visits. Not helpful, trying to predict and prevent every possible negative outcome. The exercise worked. My breathing slowed, the tightness in my chest eased. My thoughts weren't running in circles anymore, they had direction. At the Tuesday night group I shared about the upcoming visit. Several people nodded in understanding. Family stuff is hard, a woman named Jennifer said. My mom has a way of asking questions that feel like attacks. When are you going to lose weight? When are you going to get a better job? Why are you still single? And I used to spend days before and after her visits just overthinking every interaction. What changed? I asked. I learned to set boundaries, not just with her, but with my own thoughts. I can't control what she says, but I can control how much mental real estate I give to analyzing, predicting, and worrying about what she says. I can choose to redirect my thoughts instead of letting them run wild. Mark chimed in. Here's what helps me with family. Remember that you can't control their perception of you. You can be the most successful, put together, perfect version of yourself, and they might still have criticisms or disappointments. So trying to manage their opinion through overthinking is pointless. All you can do is be authentic and let them respond however they respond. Pastor Sarah added, and Daniel, remember, their possible criticism isn't happening right now. Right now, they're just coming to visit. Don't live through negative scenarios that haven't happened and might never happen. Stay present. The weekend arrived. I'd cleaned my apartment, planned some activities, and most importantly, I'd practiced redirecting my thoughts every time they started spiraling about the visit. My parents arrived Saturday morning. Within the first hour, my dad had already made a comment about the tech industry being volatile and asked if I'd considered more stable career options. My mum asked 3 times if Maya and I had talked about the future, which was code for, when are you getting engaged? The old Daniel would have spent the entire visit replaying these comments, analyzing what they really meant, spinning out about their disappointment in me. But I caught myself. My thoughts started to run, and I redirected them. Were their comments ideal? No. Did they reflect their own anxieties more than anything about me? Probably. Could I control what they thought? No. Could I respond with grace and then let it go? Yes. At lunch, my dad asked about my job in a way that felt leading. So, still at the startup? No interest in something more established? I felt the familiar defensiveness rising, felt my mind starting to race with justifications and explanations. But I paused. I like what I'm doing, Dad. The work is interesting and I'm learning a lot. But what about job security, benefits, long-term stability? Old Daniel would have launched into a detailed defense, would have spent the rest of the meal overthinking every word, would have replayed this conversation for days. New Daniel took a breath. Those are fair concerns. I've thought about them too. For now, I'm satisfied with where I am. How's your practice going? I redirected the conversation. And you know what? It worked. My dad talked about his medical practice for a while. The tension eased, and we moved on. That evening, after I dropped my parents back at their hotel, Maya asked, "How are you doing?" That was a lot. Honestly, better than I expected. They made their usual comments, but I didn't spiral about them. I caught myself starting to overthink, and I redirected. Multiple times. I noticed. You seemed more present, less in your head. I'm learning that I can't control what they think or say, but I can control how much mental energy I give to analyzing and worrying about it, and that makes all the difference. Sunday morning, I met my parents for breakfast before they headed back home. My mom, over her second cup of coffee, said something unexpected. "Daniel, I need to apologize for something. Your father and I put a lot of pressure on you growing up. We had this image of who you should be, what you should do. And I don't think we've ever really told you that we're proud of who you actually are. Not who we thought you should be, but who you chose to become." I was stunned. "Mom, where is this coming from?" "I've been thinking about it, about how we ask you questions that probably feel like criticism, about how we don't always show that we support your choices. I want you to know, we do. We're proud of you, even if we don't always say it right." My dad nodded. "Your mother's right. We worry because we're parents, but the worrying sometimes comes out as criticism. That's on us, not you." I felt tears in my eyes. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." After they left, I sat in my car for a while, processing. The visit I'd been dreading, the weekend I'd spent weeks overthinking, had actually ended with unexpected healing. And I realized something. All that mental energy I'd spent imagining negative scenarios, preparing for criticism, replaying past hurts, none of it had been necessary. In fact, it had probably made things worse by putting me on the defensive before anything even happened. At the renewed mind group that Tuesday, I shared about the visit and the unexpected apology. "That's beautiful," Jennifer said, "but I want to point something out. Even if that apology hadn't happened, you did the work. You redirected your thoughts. You stayed present. You responded with grace. The outcome was great, but your growth would have been real either way." She was right. I'd been measuring success by whether the visit went well, but the real success was that I hadn't let my racing thoughts control my experience, that I'd practiced directing them, catching them, redirecting them. Mark added, "And here's the thing, you probably wouldn't have been able to receive that apology if you'd been all wound up in your head. You were present enough to actually hear what they were saying. That's the gift of learning to manage your thoughts." Over the next week, I noticed something shifting. I was getting better at catching my thoughts when they started to run. Not perfect. I still had plenty of moments where I'd realize I'd been spiraling for 10 minutes about something trivial, but I was recognizing the pattern faster. The pause had become more natural. When I noticed my thoughts racing, I'd stop and ask, "Is this true? Is this helpful? Is this necessary right now?" More often than not, the answer was no to at least one of those questions. The redirect was getting easier. When I caught myself overthinking something, I could usually identify what productive action I could take, or identify that there was no productive action and I needed to let it go. And the release, that was still hard. Letting go of thoughts felt like losing control, but I was learning that holding on to unproductive thoughts wasn't control. It was just mental clutter. At work, my manager Steve noticed the change. "Daniel, you seem more focused lately, more decisive. What changed?" I thought about how to explain it. "I've been working on managing my thoughts better. I used to overthink everything, and it slowed me down. Now I'm learning to think productively without spiraling. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. It's showing in your work." That evening, I updated my journal, something I'd been doing every morning since Mark suggested it. I wrote, "3 weeks ago, I couldn't imagine not being dominated by my racing thoughts. They were just how my mind worked, and I assumed I'd always be exhausted by them. But I'm learning that while I can't stop my thoughts from racing, I can learn to direct them, to catch them when they start running wild, to ask if they're true, helpful, necessary, to redirect toward what's productive, and release what's not." The visit with my parents showed me how far I've come. I didn't spiral about their comments. I didn't replay conversations for days. I stayed present and responded with grace, and because I did, I was able to receive their apology, something I might have missed if I'd been too caught up in my own head. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I'm starting to understand what that means. God doesn't stop my thoughts from running. That's just how my brain works, but He helps me direct them, helps me see what's true versus what's just mental noise, helps me distinguish between productive thinking and anxious spinning, and that's changing everything. Maya noticed me journaling and came to sit beside me on the couch. "Penny for your thoughts? Or wait, should I ask for direction for your thoughts?" I laughed. "Both, maybe. I was just reflecting on how much things have changed in 3 weeks. They have changed. You've changed. You're still you, still thoughtful, still analytical, but you're not drowning in it anymore. You're using your mind instead of being used by it." Her insight struck me. That was exactly it. My racing thoughts weren't going away. They were part of who I was, but I was learning to harness them, to direct them, to use them for good instead of letting them exhaust me. I still had a long way to go. I still caught myself spiraling, still found myself overthinking trivial things, still had moments where my thoughts ran wild. But I had tools now. I had community. I had someone who brought direction when my thoughts wanted to just run in circles, and that made all the difference. 1 month into learning to direct my thoughts instead of letting them run wild, I faced a challenge that threatened to undo all my progress, a major project at work that required exactly the kind of obsessive thinking I was trying to move away from. Steve called me into his office on a Monday morning. "Daniel, I need you to lead a critical project. We're rebuilding our core API infrastructure. It's complex, high stakes, and needs to be done right. You're the best person for it." My first reaction was pride. He trusted me with something important. My second reaction was panic. My thoughts immediately started racing. What if I make a mistake? What if I miss something critical? What if the system breaks? What if I let the team down? What if this is too much for me? "I know it's a big ask," Steve continued, "but I've seen you grow lately. You're more focused, more confident. I think you can handle this." I accepted the project because saying no felt impossible. But as I walked back to my desk, I felt the familiar tightness in my chest. This was exactly the kind of thing that would have sent old Daniel into weeks of overthinking spiral. And honestly, part of me wondered if I could even do this job without that level of obsessive analysis. That evening, I talked to Maya about it. What if I can't do this? What if learning to manage my thoughts has actually made me worse at my job? What if I need that overthinking to be good at what I do? She looked at me thoughtfully. Or what if you've been confusing obsessive overthinking with being thorough? What if you can be excellent at your job without exhausting yourself mentally? I wanted to believe her, but the doubt was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing through the project, all the things that could go wrong, all the edge cases I'd need to consider, all the decisions I'd need to make. It felt overwhelming. At 2 a.m., lying awake, I remembered what I'd learned. My thoughts were running, but I needed direction, not just endless analysis. I got up and opened my journal, started writing everything that was in my head about the project. Every worry, every technical concern, every fear. I filled 3 pages. Then I stopped and read what I'd written, and I realized something. Most of what I'd written wasn't actually about the project. It was about my fear of failure, my fear of disappointing Steve, my fear that I wasn't good enough, my fear that I needed my overthinking to be competent. The actual technical concerns, those filled maybe half a page. The rest was just anxiety dressed up as legitimate concerns. I took a separate sheet and wrote at the top, "What do I actually need to think about for this project?" Then I listed the real, concrete things: architecture decisions, technology choices, timeline planning, team coordination, specific, actionable things. Then on another sheet, "What am I overthinking that isn't helpful?" And I listed all the catastrophizing, the hypothetical disasters, the fears about my competence, the endless what-if scenarios. Looking at the 2 lists side by side, the difference was stark. One was productive thinking, the other was just my thoughts running wild. The next morning at the Renewed Mind group, I shared about the project and my fears. Mark nodded immediately. "I've been there, big project, high stakes, and suddenly all your old patterns want to come back. You start thinking, maybe I need to overthink this. Maybe that's what made me good at my job." Exactly. How did you handle it? I had to learn the difference between being thorough and being obsessive. Being thorough means you think through the important things systematically. Being obsessive means you think through the same things over and over, plus a bunch of hypothetical disasters that will probably never happen. Jennifer added, "I had to deal with this at my job too. I'm an accountant, so accuracy is critical." And I convinced myself that my anxious checking and rechecking was just being careful. But eventually I realized checking something once carefully is productive. Checking it 17 times is anxiety. Pastor Sarah spoke up. "Daniel, here's a question. When you're overthinking this project, are you getting new insights each time? Or are you just cycling through the same worries?" I thought about it. Cycling through the same worries mostly. Then that's your sign. Productive thinking generates new understanding, new solutions, new clarity, Anxious overthinking just loops. Same thoughts, same fears, over and over. When you catch yourself looping, that's when you need to redirect. She was right. I'd been confusing loops with thoroughness. Over the next week, I practiced a new approach to the project. I'd set aside specific times to think deeply about it. Morning planning sessions where I'd work through technical decisions, architecture reviews with my team, focused problem-solving time. During those times, I'd think as deeply as I needed to. But outside those times, when my mind tried to jump back to the project, I'd ask, is this new thinking, or am I just looping? If it was looping, the same worries, the same fears, I'd redirect. I'd remind myself that I'd already thought through those things during my planning time, and rehashing them wouldn't help. It was harder than I expected. My mind wanted to chew on the project constantly, but I kept practicing the redirect. One afternoon, I was in a meeting about something completely different, but my mind kept drifting to the API project, running through scenarios, worrying about potential problems. I caught myself and actually whispered under my breath, "Not now. I'll think about that during my planning time." The guy next to me gave me a weird look, but I didn't care. It worked. My attention came back to the actual meeting. 2 weeks into the project, something unexpected happened. Steve pulled me aside after a team meeting. "Daniel, I want to give you some feedback. This project is going really well. Better than I expected. Really. I feel like I'm barely keeping it together." He looked surprised. "That's not how it appears. You're making clear decisions, communicating well with the team, staying on schedule. Whatever you're doing differently, it's working. You seem more strategic, less caught in the weeds." His feedback stunned me. I'd been so focused on managing my overthinking that I hadn't realized it was actually improving my work. By not getting lost in endless mental loops, I was seeing the bigger picture more clearly. By directing my thoughts instead of letting them run wild, I was making better decisions faster. That evening, I shared the feedback with Maya. She smiled. "Of course you're doing better. When you're not exhausting yourself with overthinking, you have more mental energy for actual productive thinking. When you're not stuck in loops, you can actually move forward." I guess I always thought my overthinking was what made me good at my job, but maybe it was actually holding me back. Not maybe. Definitely. I've watched you these past few weeks. You're still thoughtful, still analytical, but now you're using that analytically instead of being used by it. At the next Tuesday group, I shared about the project going well despite, or maybe because of, my efforts to manage my overthinking. "That's huge," Mark said. "You're learning that you don't need your anxiety to be competent. That's a big lesson." A newer member of the group, a woman named Rachel, who'd been quiet until now, spoke up. "Can I ask how you do that? How you distinguish between productive thinking and overthinking? Because I'm a lawyer, and I keep telling myself I need to think through every angle, but I'm exhausted all the time." "I ask myself if I'm getting new insights," I said. "If I'm thinking about something and learning new things, understanding it better, that's productive. If I'm just cycling through the same worries and scenarios without any new understanding, that's overthinking." Mark added, "And you have to set boundaries with yourself. Schedule time for deep thinking, but outside that time, when your mind tries to jump back to it, you redirect. You can't think deeply about everything all the time. You'll burn out." Rachel nodded, taking notes. "That makes sense. I think I've been trying to think deeply about everything simultaneously, and it's overwhelming." Pastor Sarah said, "This is important for everyone to hear. Your mind is a gift. Thinking deeply is a gift. But like any gift, it needs direction. A river is powerful when it's channeled. It can generate electricity, water crops, sustain life. But when it floods and goes everywhere, it's destructive. Your thoughts are the same way. Channeled and directed, they're incredibly powerful. Running wild, they're destructive." Her metaphor struck me. I'd been living with a flooded mind, thoughts going everywhere, overwhelming everything. Now I was learning to channel them, to direct them toward what mattered, to use their power productively instead of being destroyed by them. That weekend, Maya and I went hiking at a state park outside Austin. As we walked, I practiced something Mark had suggested, being fully present, without my thoughts running ahead or behind. It was harder than it sounded. My mind kept jumping to the project, to work things I needed to do Monday, to conversations I wanted to analyze. But each time, I'd catch myself. I'd redirect my attention to what was actually happening. The trail beneath my feet, the trees around us, Maya's hand in mine, the sound of birds, the warmth of the sun. "You're doing it again," Maya said after a while. "Doing what?" "Being present. Actually here, it's nice. I'm trying. My mind still wants to run everywhere else, but I'm getting better at catching it." We stopped at an overlook, looking out over the hill country. Maya squeezed my hand. "I want to tell you something. These past few weeks, watching you work on this, watching you change, it's made me fall in love with you all over again." I looked at her, surprised. "Really? Really? You're still you, still thoughtful, still deep, still the person I fell for. But you're not drowning anymore. You're not trapped in your head. And that means you can actually be here with me. That changes everything." I felt tears in my eyes. I didn't realize how much my overthinking was affecting us. It was. "But you're doing the work to change. That matters." As we hiked back, I thought about her words, about how learning to direct my thoughts wasn't just about work or personal peace. It was affecting my relationships, my ability to connect, my capacity to be present with the people I loved. That evening, I updated my journal. 1 month in, and I'm learning that directing my thoughts instead of letting them run wild isn't about thinking less. It's about thinking better. It's about channeling my mental energy toward what's productive instead of letting it flood into every worry and hypothetical scenario. The API project is going well, better than I expected. Steve's feedback made me realize that managing my overthinking hasn't made me worse at my job. It's made me better, because I'm not getting lost in mental loops. I'm seeing the bigger picture. I'm making decisions instead of endlessly analyzing. And Maya's words today hit me hard. My overthinking wasn't just affecting me. It was affecting us. When I'm trapped in my head, I can't be present with her. Learning to redirect my thoughts isn't just about my own mental health. It's about being able to actually show up in my relationships. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I'm understanding more deeply what this means. God doesn't stop my thoughts. My mind is active, analytical, always processing. That's how I'm wired. But He helps me direct that energy, helps me distinguish between productive thinking and anxious looping, helps me channel my thoughts toward what matters instead of letting them flood everywhere. I'm learning that I don't need my overthinking to be good at my job or good in relationships. What I need is directed thinking, purposeful thinking, thinking that serves me instead of exhausting me. The next Tuesday, Pastor Sarah opened the group with a new teaching. I want to talk about the difference between meditation and rumination. They sound similar, but they're opposite. Meditation is dwelling on something true, something good, something that brings life. Rumination is dwelling on worries, fears, negative scenarios. One brings peace, the other brings anxiety. She had us practice. Think of something you've been ruminating on, a worry, a fear, something you can't stop thinking about. Now ask yourself, is this meditation or rumination? Is it bringing life or anxiety? I thought about my patterns with the API project. When I was thinking through technical architecture, problem-solving, planning, that felt like meditation, purposeful, life-giving thinking. When I was spiraling about failure, catastrophizing about what could go wrong, that was rumination, circular, anxiety-producing thinking. The distinction was clarifying. I didn't need to stop thinking deeply. I needed to stop ruminating. I needed to redirect rumination toward meditation, toward true, productive, life-giving thought. After the meeting, Rachel approached me. "Thank you for what you shared last week. I tried your approach, scheduling thinking time, redirecting outside that time. It's already helping. I'm glad. It's not perfect, and I still catch myself overthinking, but it's so much better than it was." Can I ask you something? Do you ever feel guilty about not overthinking, like you're being irresponsible or careless? I nodded immediately. All the time. Like if I'm not worrying about something, I'm not taking it seriously. How do you handle that? I remind myself that worry isn't the same as care. I can care deeply about my work, my relationships, my responsibilities without worrying constantly about them. Productive thinking is caring. Anxious overthinking is just exhausting myself. She smiled. Worry isn't the same as care. I need to write that down. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how far I'd come in a month. I wasn't perfect. I still caught myself overthinking. Just that day, I'd spent 20 minutes analyzing a 3-sentence email before sending it. But I'd caught myself, recognized the pattern, and redirected. The difference was that overthinking was no longer my default. It was something I noticed and corrected, not something I just accepted as how my mind worked. My thoughts still ran. They probably always would. But more and more, they ran with direction instead of just running wild. And that was changing everything. 6 weeks into learning to direct my racing thoughts, I faced something that threatened to derail everything. Maya told me she needed space. It was a Friday evening. We were supposed to have dinner together, but she'd been quiet all week, distant. I'd noticed, but had been trying not to overthink it, practicing what I'd learned about not spiraling over every small change in someone's behavior. But when she came over, I could tell something was wrong. She sat on my couch with that look people get when they're about to say something difficult. "Daniel, we need to talk." Those 4 words sent my thoughts immediately racing. She's breaking up with me. She's unhappy. I did something wrong. I've been too focused on myself. This is over. What will I do without her? How did I miss the signs? What could I have done differently? "Okay," I managed to say, my chest already tight. "I love you. I need you to know that first. But I'm struggling right now, with my job, with my family stuff, with a lot of things. And I need some space to figure it out. Not a breakup, just space. Time to work through what I'm dealing with without feeling like I need to be on for someone else." My mind exploded with thoughts. How much space? What does space mean? Is this really about her or about us? Did I cause this? What if space turns into a breakup? Should I fight for us? Should I give her space? What if I lose her? What if this is the beginning of the end? "Daniel, I can see you spiraling. I need you to hear me. This isn't about you. This is about me needing to process some things. Can you give me a couple weeks?" "Yeah, of course. Whatever you need." The words came out automatically, but inside I was drowning. After she left, I sat on my couch feeling like I couldn't breathe. All the progress I'd made, all the tools I'd learned, none of it seemed to matter in the face of this. My thoughts were racing faster than they had in weeks. What did I do wrong? I replayed every conversation we'd had recently, analyzing every word, every tone, looking for where I'd messed up. Was I too focused on my own stuff? Was I not attentive enough? Did I say something that hurt her? Why didn't I see this coming? And then the future spiraling. What if she realizes she's happier without me? What if this space makes her see all my flaws? What if she meets someone else? What if I've lost the best relationship I've ever had? I grabbed my phone to text her, to ask for clarification, to try to understand exactly what she meant. But I stopped myself. That was the old pattern, seeking certainty through endless analysis and clarification. I put the phone down, but my thoughts wouldn't stop. They ran and ran and ran. I tried journaling, but I just filled pages with the same spiraling worries. I tried redirecting, but my mind kept jumping back. I tried praying, but I couldn't focus enough to form coherent thoughts. At 1 a.m., still awake, still drowning in racing thoughts, I did something I'd never done before. I called Mark. He'd given me his number for emergencies, and this felt like an emergency. "Daniel, everything okay?" "No, I'm sorry to call so late, but I'm drowning. Maya asked for space, and my thoughts won't stop. Everything I've learned feels useless right now." "Where are you?" "Home. I'm coming over. Give me 20 minutes. He showed up with coffee from a 24-hour place. We sat on my couch and I told him everything. What Maya had said, how my thoughts had immediately spiraled, how I couldn't seem to apply any of the tools I'd learned. "Okay, first thing," Mark said. "You're in crisis mode. Your nervous system is activated. All your old patterns are going to try to come back. That's normal. It doesn't mean you've failed or lost your progress. It feels like I'm right back where I started. You're not. You're aware of what's happening. Old Daniel would have been spiraling for hours without even realizing he was overthinking. You realized it, tried your tools, and when they weren't enough, you reached out. That's progress. But I can't stop the thoughts. They just keep running. Because this is important to you. Your brain is trying to protect you by analyzing everything, trying to find a solution, trying to control the outcome. But here's the thing. You can't control this. You can't think your way into knowing what Maya needs or what will happen. All you can do is respect her request and manage your own thoughts in the meantime. How? Because everything I try isn't working. Mark was quiet for a moment. When I was going through my divorce, before I really learned to manage my overthinking, I tried to analyze my way to understanding why it was happening. I replayed every conversation, every fight, every moment. And you know what? It didn't help. It didn't change anything, it just tortured me. So what did you do? Eventually, I had to accept that I couldn't figure it out by thinking about it more. I had to sit with the uncertainty, and that's probably the hardest thing you're going to have to do right now, sit with not knowing. We talked until 3 a.m. Before Mark left, he said, "Call me tomorrow. Don't try to handle this alone. And Daniel, it's okay that this is hard. It's okay that your tools aren't working perfectly. This is a real crisis. Give yourself grace." After he left, I sat in the quiet. My thoughts were still racing, but slightly slower. Mark's presence had helped, even if he hadn't fixed anything. I opened my journal and wrote, "I can't control this. I can't think my way to certainty. I can't analyze myself to a guaranteed outcome. All I can do is respect Maya's need for space and manage my own thoughts while I wait. And right now, managing my thoughts means accepting that they're going to race, that I'm going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay." The next morning, Saturday, I woke up exhausted. My first thought was Maya. The familiar spiral started immediately, analyzing, worrying, catastrophizing. But this time I caught it earlier. I got up and went for a run, something I rarely did. But my therapist, yes, I'd started seeing a therapist 2 weeks ago at Pastor Sarah's suggestion, had said physical activity could help with racing thoughts. She was right. Running didn't stop the thoughts, but it gave them somewhere to go. The rhythm of my feet hitting the pavement, the focus on breathing, the physical exertion, it all helped channel the mental energy. When I got back, sweaty and tired, my mind was quieter. Not silent, but quieter. I took a shower and then did something Mark had suggested. I made a list of what I could control versus what I couldn't control. Can't control. What Maya decides. How long she needs space. Whether this relationship works out. Her feelings or thought process. The outcome can control. How I spend my time during this space. Whether I respect her boundaries. My own thoughts and reactions. Whether I use this time to grow who I reach out to for support. Looking at the lists, the reality was stark. Almost everything I was obsessing over was in the can't control column. The only things I had power over were in the second column. I decided to focus there. What could I do with this time? I could continue working on my thought patterns. I could invest in my friendships. I could focus on the API project at work. I could deepen my spiritual practices. I could take care of myself. At the Renewed Mind group on Tuesday, I shared about what had happened. The group's response was immediate and supportive. "This is the real test," Jennifer said. "When life throws something at you that genuinely matters, that's when you find out if what you've learned is real or just theoretical." Pastor Sarah added, "And Daniel, I want you to notice something. You're in pain right now, you're struggling, but you're here. You showed up to group, you called Mark at 1 a.m. instead of just drowning alone. You're using your tools even when they feel inadequate. That's faithfulness. But my thoughts won't stop racing about it. They might not. This is important to you. Your brain is trying to protect you, but you're directing those thoughts better than you would have 6 weeks ago. You're not just running in circles, you're acknowledging what you can't control, focusing on what you can, reaching out for support. That's direction. Rachel, the lawyer, spoke up. I went through something similar with my boyfriend last year. He needed space, and I completely spiraled. Analyzed every text message, replayed every conversation, drove myself crazy, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. And you know what? None of it helped. The relationship ended anyway. But the overthinking made those weeks torture. Don't do what I did. What would you do differently now? I asked. I'd accept that I couldn't know, that no amount of analysis would give me certainty. I'd focus on taking care of myself and let the relationship be what it would be. I'd trust that if it was meant to work out, it would, and if it wasn't, I'd be okay. Her words helped, not because they made the situation easier, but because they reminded me that I could survive this uncertainty. Others had been through similar things and made it through. Over the next week, I practiced something new, sitting with uncertainty, not trying to resolve it, not trying to think my way to answers, just sitting with the discomfort of not knowing. It was brutal. Every fiber of my being wanted to text Maya, to ask for updates, to try to control the situation. My thoughts raced constantly, trying to analyze, predict, prepare for every outcome. But I kept redirecting. When my thoughts started racing about what Maya was thinking, I'd acknowledge it. I can't know that. I can only trust. When I caught myself replaying conversations looking for what I did wrong, I'd stop. I've thought about this. More analysis won't help. Time to redirect. The API project at work became a lifeline. It gave my racing thoughts somewhere productive to go. When I caught myself spiraling about Maya, I'd redirect that mental energy toward a technical problem I needed to solve. It wasn't avoidance, it was channeling. Steve noticed I was working longer hours. Daniel, everything okay? You've been staying late. Girlfriend needed some space. I'm working through it. The project helps keep my mind occupied. He nodded understandingly. Just make sure you're taking care of yourself too. Don't burn out. 10 days into Maya's space, she texted, "Can we talk?" My heart raced. My thoughts immediately jumped to every possible thing she might say. This is it. She's ending it. Or maybe she's ready to come back. Or maybe she needs more time. What if she met someone else? What if she realized she's better without me? I caught myself. My thoughts were running. I needed direction. I took a breath and prayed, not a long, elaborate prayer, just, "God, my thoughts are racing. Help me stay present for whatever she needs to say." We met at a park. She looked tired but more settled than she had 2 weeks ago. "I'm sorry I needed to do this," she started. "But I needed to figure some things out about myself, about what I want, about where I'm heading. And I forced myself not to jump to conclusions, not to fill the silence with my racing thoughts. And I realized something. I love you. I want to be with you, but I need us to be more balanced. I'd been making you my entire world, and when you were working on your own stuff, which was good and necessary, I felt lost. I need my own things, my own friends, my own growth." Relief flooded through me, but I waited, let her finish. "I'm starting therapy. I'm joining a book club. I'm investing in friendships I'd let slide. Not because I love you less, but because I need to be a whole person on my own, not just half of a couple." That makes sense, and I support that. I want you to have those things. Can I ask you something? These past 2 weeks, did you spiral? Did you overthink everything? I laughed, but honestly, yes, a lot. But I also practiced everything I've been learning. I reached out for support. I redirected my thoughts. I focused on what I could control. I sat with the uncertainty instead of trying to think my way to answers. It was hard, really hard, but I did it differently than I would have 2 months ago. She smiled. That's good. That's really good. Because I need to be with someone who can handle uncertainty, who doesn't need to analyze everything to death, and I think you're becoming that person. As we walked through the park, my thoughts tried to race again, planning our future, analyzing what this meant, worrying about next time. But I caught myself. Right now, in this moment, we were together. We were okay, that was enough. That evening, I updated my journal. Today, I learned that all the work I've been doing isn't about never having racing thoughts. It's about what I do when they come. This situation with Maya triggered everything. All my old patterns wanted to come back. And they did come back to some extent. But I didn't let them take over. I reached out for help instead of drowning alone. I focused on what I could control. I sat with uncertainty instead of trying to think my way to certainty. I channeled my mental energy toward productive things. I kept showing up to work, to my group, to my practices, even when everything felt hard. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I'm learning that direction doesn't mean my thoughts stop running. It means I learn to direct them even when they're racing, especially when they're racing. In crisis, in uncertainty, in pain, that's when this practice matters most. Maya came back, but even if she hadn't, I would have survived this. Because I have tools now, I have community, I have someone who brings direction when my thoughts want to just run in circles. This isn't over. I'll face more uncertainty, more moments when my thoughts want to race out of control. But I'm learning, I'm growing, and I'm not alone in it. The next Tuesday at group, Pastor Sarah taught about the verse where Paul talks about taking thoughts captive. It doesn't say your thoughts won't come, she explained. It says you take them captive, you catch them, you direct them, you choose what to do with them. That's the practice, not preventing thoughts, but directing them. I realized that's what I'd been doing these past 2 weeks. Not preventing the racing thoughts about Maya, but catching them, directing them, choosing what to do with them. And slowly, painfully, I'd learned to sit with uncertainty instead of trying to think my way out of it. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I'd done it. And that meant I could do it again when the next crisis came, because there would be a next crisis. There always was, but I had direction now, and that made all the difference. 2 months into this journey of learning to direct my racing thoughts, something unexpected happened. People started asking me for help. It started with a coworker named Jason. He was a junior developer on my team, sharp, but clearly struggling. I'd noticed him working late every night, looking exhausted, constantly checking and rechecking his code. One afternoon, after a team meeting where he'd apologized 3 times for a minor bug, I pulled him aside. "Jason, can we talk for a minute?" He looked immediately anxious. "Did I mess something up? I know that bug shouldn't have made it through. I should have caught it. I'm sorry." "That's not what this is about. I'm noticing you seem really stressed. You're working long hours. You're apologizing for things that don't need apologies. I just wanted to check in." His shoulders dropped. "I'm drowning. I can't stop thinking about work. Every night I lie awake, replaying code in my head, finding problems that might not even exist. I'm exhausted, but I can't turn my brain off, and I keep thinking everyone's judging me, that I'm not good enough, that I'm going to get fired." I recognized myself in his words so clearly. This was me 2 months ago. Can I tell you something? I struggle with the exact same thing. Racing thoughts, constant overthinking, mental exhaustion, and I've been learning how to manage it. His eyes widened. "Really? You seem so together." "I'm learning. I'm not perfect at it, but I've made progress. Would you want to grab coffee sometime? I could share what's been helping me." We met that Saturday at a coffee shop. I told him my story, the bathroom moment, the words I'd received, the renewed mind group, the tools I'd learned. He listened with the intensity of someone desperate for help. "So you just redirect your thoughts, and that works?" "It's not just redirecting. It's recognizing when your thoughts are running wild versus when they're being productive. It's learning the difference between thorough thinking and obsessive overthinking. It's understanding that you can't think your way to certainty about everything. But I'm a developer. My job is to think through everything, to catch every bug, to consider every edge case. I'm a developer too, and I had to learn that there's a difference between being good at your job and torturing yourself mentally. You can be thorough during your work hours without letting work consume every moment of your life. You can care about quality without obsessing over every possible thing that could go wrong. I shared about the lists I'd made, what I could control versus couldn't control, about scheduling thinking time versus letting my thoughts run constantly. about the pause, the redirect, the release, about learning to sit with uncertainty. "This is going to sound weird," Jason said, "but would you be willing to mentor me on this? Not just the coding stuff, but this thought management stuff?" I hesitated. I was still learning myself. I still had days where I struggled. Who was I to mentor someone else? But then I remembered what Pastor Sarah had said. You don't have to be perfect to help others. You just have to be a few steps ahead on the path. Yeah, I can do that. But I want you to know, I'm still figuring this out myself. I'm not an expert. That's okay. You're further along than I am. That's enough. Over the next few weeks, Jason and I met regularly. I shared the tools I'd learned, but more than that, I shared my struggles. When I had a bad day where my thoughts raced, I told him about it. When I successfully redirected, I walked him through how I did it. When I failed to manage my overthinking, I was honest about that too. And something interesting happened. Teaching Jason helped me. Articulating what I'd learned, putting it into words for someone else, reinforced it in my own mind. And seeing him make progress, seeing him start to catch his racing thoughts, start to redirect them, reminded me that this work was real and valuable. At the Renewed Mind group, I shared about mentoring Jason. Mark smiled. That's how this works. We receive help, we grow, and then we help others. Not because we're perfect, but because we've walked the path. Pastor Sarah added, "And Daniel, I want you to consider something. Would you be willing to co-lead this group with me? Help facilitate, share your journey, support others who are where you were?" The request caught me off guard. I don't know if I'm qualified. I'm still learning. That's exactly why you're qualified. You remember what it's like to be in the thick of it. You can relate to people's struggles in a way someone who conquered this years ago can't. And you've done the work. You've practiced the tools. You've grown. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be willing. I thought about it for a moment, felt my thoughts starting to race. What if I'm not good enough? What if I lead people wrong? What if I mess this up? And then I caught myself. My thoughts were running. I needed direction. Okay, yes, I'll do it. The following week, I co-facilitated my first group meeting. It was terrifying and exhilarating. A new person, a woman named Angela who worked in marketing, shared about her constant overthinking, replaying conversations, analyzing every interaction, never feeling like she'd said the right thing. "I can't turn it off," she said. "My mind just goes and goes." I found myself responding from a place of genuine understanding. "I know exactly what you mean. My mind does the same thing, and I've learned that turning it off isn't really the goal. The goal is directing it, learning when to engage with thoughts and when to let them go. But how do you know the difference? You ask yourself, is this thought giving me new information? Am I learning something or just looping? If you're replaying a conversation for the 10th time and not gaining any new insight, that's looping. That's when you redirect. After the meeting, Angela thanked me. "Hearing you talk about your own struggle helps. Because I can see you're still in it. You're not some expert who has it all figured out, and that makes it feel possible for me." Her words echoed what Jason had said. People didn't need me to be perfect. They needed me to be real, to be honest about the struggle, while also showing that progress was possible. Maya noticed the change in me. One evening, as I was preparing for the next week's group meeting, she said, "You're coming alive with this, with helping people. It's strange. I'm still working on my own stuff, still catching my racing thoughts multiple times a day, but helping others helps me. It reinforces what I'm learning. It's more than that. You've found purpose in your pain. You went through all that mental torture, and now you're using it to help others. That's beautiful." Her words stayed with me. Purpose in my pain. I'd never thought of it that way. I'd seen my racing thoughts as just a problem, something to overcome. But maybe they could be more than that. Maybe my struggle could become a source of strength for others. At work, the API project was nearing completion. Steve pulled me into a meeting with the senior leadership team. "We want to talk to you about a promotion. Senior engineer, with the potential to move into team lead. You've shown remarkable growth these past few months, not just technically, but in leadership. You've been mentoring Jason, you've handled pressure well, you've been making strategic decisions. We think you're ready for more responsibility." My immediate reaction was excitement followed by spiraling thoughts. What if I can't handle it? What if the added responsibility brings back all my old patterns? What if I fail? What if managing people is too much pressure? What if? I caught myself. My thoughts were running. Time to redirect. "Thank you. I'm honored. Can I have a few days to think about it?" They agreed. That evening, I talked it through with Maya, with Mark, and in my journal. I made lists. What excited me about the opportunity, what scared me, what I'd need to do differently to succeed. But most importantly, I asked myself, am I overthinking this or thinking it through? The answer was clear. I was thinking it through. I had legitimate considerations to weigh. This was productive thinking, not anxious spiraling. 3 days later, I accepted the promotion. At the next renewed mind group, I shared about the decision and about my fear that added responsibility might trigger my old patterns. "That's a real concern," Pastor Sarah said. "More responsibility can mean more stress, which can trigger old coping mechanisms. But you're aware of it. You have tools, and you have community. That's huge." Mark added, "I went through something similar when I started my business. More responsibility, more pressure, and my overthinking wanted to come back full force. But I'd learned the difference between productive thinking and anxious spinning. I used what I'd learned. You can too." Rachel spoke up. "Can I share something? I made partner at my firm 6 months ago, and I was terrified my anxiety would come back with the added pressure. But you know what? Having these tools actually made me better at the job. Because I wasn't wasting mental energy on overthinking, I was channeling it into productive strategy. The promotion didn't break me. It gave me a chance to prove to myself that I'd actually changed." Her words encouraged me. Maybe this promotion wasn't a threat to my progress. Maybe it was an opportunity to practice what I'd learned under new circumstances. My first week as senior engineer was intense. More meetings, more decisions, more people looking to me for guidance. And yes, my thoughts tried to race more, tried to spiral into old patterns of overanalyzing every decision, replaying every interaction, catastrophizing about potential mistakes. But I caught them. Over and over, I caught them, and I redirected. When I found myself replaying a meeting for the 3rd time, analyzing every word I'd said, I'd stop. "I've thought about this. More analysis won't help. Move on." When I started catastrophizing about a technical decision, I'd pause. Is this productive thinking or anxious spinning? If it's spinning, redirect. When I lay awake at night running through tomorrow's task list for the 5th time, I'd acknowledge, I've planned. More planning won't make tomorrow more successful. Rest. Jason noticed the difference in me. "You seem so calm under pressure. How do you do it?" "I'm not always calm inside. My thoughts still race. But I've learned to direct them instead of letting them run wild. And honestly, mentoring you has helped. When I explain these tools to you, it reinforces them for me." One afternoon, about 3 weeks into the new role, I had a moment of clarity. I was in a difficult meeting, technical disagreement, tension in the room, multiple strong opinions. Old Daniel would have spiraled afterward for hours, replaying every comment, analyzing every reaction, worrying about every possible consequence. But new Daniel, I felt my thoughts trying to start that spiral, and I consciously chose to redirect them. I thought, that meeting is over. I made the best decision I could with the information I had. Replaying it won't change anything. What do I need to focus on next? And my thoughts listened. They redirected. It wasn't effortless. I felt the pull to spiral, but I didn't give in to it. And within minutes, my mind was focused on the next task. That evening, I called Mark. "I think I'm getting it. Actually getting it. I just redirected my thoughts in a way that would have been impossible 2 months ago." "That's awesome. But Daniel, remember, you're going to have setbacks, days where the old patterns come back strong. That's normal. Don't let that discourage you when it happens. He was right, of course. 2 days later, I had a rough day. A bug made it through to production, nothing catastrophic, but visible. And my thoughts spiraled. What if this ruins my credibility as senior engineer? What if people think I'm not ready for this role? What if I let the team down? What if? I tried my tools, but they felt inadequate. The spiral had momentum. So I did what Mark had taught me. I reached out. I texted him. I called Maya. I went for a run. I didn't fight the thoughts alone. And gradually, with support, I redirected. I reminded myself, one bug doesn't define my competence. Every developer makes mistakes. I fixed it quickly. The team wasn't judging me the way I was judging myself. By the next morning, the spiral had passed. And I'd learned something important. Progress wasn't linear. I'd have good days and bad days. The key was not expecting perfection, but having tools and community to help when the bad days came. At the renewed mind group that week, Angela shared a breakthrough. I used the redirect this week. I was spiraling about something I'd said to my boss, replaying it over and over. And I stopped and asked myself, am I getting new information or just looping? I was just looping, so I redirected. Consciously chose to think about something else. And it worked. For the first time, I felt like I had some control over my racing thoughts. Watching her face light up with that realization, I felt deep gratitude. This was what made the struggle worth it. Not just my own progress, but being part of a community where we all helped each other grow. After the meeting, a new guy approached me. His name was Tyler, and he'd been coming for 2 weeks, but hadn't shared much. Daniel, can I talk to you? I'm a software engineer too, and I heard you talking about how your overthinking affected your work. That's exactly where I am. I'm terrified I'm going to get fired because I can't focus, can't make decisions, can't stop second-guessing everything. Want to grab coffee this week? I offered. I'd be happy to share what's helped me. As I drove home that night, I reflected on how much had changed in 2 months. I'd gone from being someone drowning in my own racing thoughts to someone who could help others navigate theirs. Not because I'd perfected it, I hadn't, but because I'd learned enough to share, because I was a few steps ahead on the path. I updated my journal that night. 2 months ago, I couldn't imagine being in a position to help others. I was barely helping myself. But I'm learning that you don't have to be perfect to be useful. You just have to be willing to share what you're learning, to be honest about your struggles, and to walk alongside others who are where you were. The promotion scared me. I worried it would trigger all my old patterns. And yes, it's brought more pressure, but it's also given me a chance to prove to myself that what I've learned is real. I can handle more responsibility without drowning in overthinking. I can direct my thoughts even when the stakes are higher. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I understand this more deeply now. My thoughts still run, probably always will. That's how my brain works. But I'm learning to direct them, to catch them when they start spiraling, to redirect them toward what's productive, to release what I can't control. And now I get to help others learn the same thing. Jason, Angela, Tyler, and whoever else shows up needing help. Not because I'm an expert, but because I remember what it's like to drown in your own thoughts, and I can show them that there's another way to live. This isn't about reaching some perfect state where my thoughts never race. It's about learning to direct them when they do. It's about building tools and community and practices that help me manage my racing mind. It's about progress, not perfection. And increasingly, it's about using my own struggle to help others through theirs. That's purpose and pain. That's redemption. That's grace. I closed the journal and checked my phone. A text from Jason. Had my first successful redirect today, caught myself spiraling about a code review and consciously chose to let it go. Felt amazing. Thank you for showing me this is possible. I smiled. This was it. This was what made the struggle worth it. Not just my own healing, but getting to be part of others' healing too. My thoughts still ran. They probably always would. But I was learning to direct them, And that was changing everything, not just for me, but for everyone I got to walk with on this path. 3 months into this journey, I learned a hard lesson. Progress isn't linear, and sometimes you need to fall back into old patterns to understand how far you've come. It started with a perfect storm of stress. The API project hit a major snag, a security vulnerability we hadn't anticipated that required a complete architectural redesign. At the same time, my responsibilities as senior engineer expanded significantly. Steve asked me to take over managing a struggling team member, coordinate with 3 different departments, and present our quarterly results to the executive team. Then Maya's father had a heart attack. Not fatal, thank God, but serious enough that she needed to fly home to Chicago for a week. And my own dad called with concerning news. My mom had been diagnosed with early-stage breast cancer. Treatable, but scary. Any one of these things would have been manageable, but all of them hitting at once. My carefully constructed mental practices started crumbling. The racing thoughts came back with a vengeance. Not gradually, not manageable, like a flood. Every night I'd lie awake for hours, my mind spinning through everything. The API vulnerability, how we'd fix it, what could go wrong. The team member I was supposed to help, all the ways I might mess that up. The executive presentation, every possible question they might ask, every way I could look incompetent. Maya's dad, his recovery, how she was handling it, my mom's cancer, the treatment options, the statistics I shouldn't have Googled, the tools I'd learned felt useless. I tried redirecting, my thoughts just came back stronger. I tried the pause, it didn't work. I tried journaling, I just filled pages with spiraling anxiety. I tried reaching out to Mark. Talking helped in the moment, but the thoughts came racing back as soon as I was alone. After 3 days of maybe 4 hours of sleep total, I showed up at work looking and feeling like a disaster. I couldn't focus in meetings. I made a decision about the API redesign and then second-guessed it for 2 hours. I started replaying a conversation with Steve, analyzing every word, convinced I'd said something wrong. Jason noticed. "Daniel, are you okay? You seem off." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just a lot going on." But I wasn't fine. I was drowning, and the worst part was feeling like a fraud. How could I mentor Jason, co-lead the Renewed Mind group, present myself as someone who'd learned to manage racing thoughts when I was right back where I started? That evening, I skipped the Tuesday Renewed Mind meeting for the first time since joining. I texted Pastor Sarah that I wasn't feeling well, which was technically true. I wasn't feeling well mentally, but I couldn't face the group, couldn't face Angela and Tyler and the others I'd been helping when I felt like such a failure. Maya called from Chicago that night. I tried to sound normal, but she knew me too well. "Daniel, what's wrong? And don't say nothing." I broke, told her everything. The work pressure, the sleepless nights, the racing thoughts that wouldn't stop, the feeling of being back at square one, the shame of feeling like I'd failed after all my progress. "Baby, you haven't failed. You're just overwhelmed. This is a lot hitting at once. But all the tools I learned aren't working. I'm right back where I started. Maybe I never really changed." "That's not true. You're in crisis mode, and old patterns come back in crisis. That doesn't erase your progress. It just means you're human." After we hung up, I sat on my couch feeling utterly defeated. I'd been so sure I'd figured this out, so sure I could manage my racing thoughts. But here I was, drowning again. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Pastor Sarah said you missed group tonight. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then I did something that felt vulnerable and scary. I was honest. "No, I'm drowning. Everything hit at once, and I'm right back where I started. All the tools feel useless. I feel like a fraud for trying to help others when I can't even help myself." His response came immediately. "I'm coming over." 20 minutes later, Mark was on my couch with coffee. I told him everything, including the shame of feeling like I'd regressed completely. "Okay, first, you haven't regressed. Mark said firmly. You're in crisis, dealing with multiple major stressors simultaneously. Your nervous system is overwhelmed. That's not the same as erasing 3 months of growth. But I can't redirect my thoughts. I can't make the tools work. It's like I forgot everything I learned. No, you're trying to use basic tools for an advanced crisis. It's like you learned to swim in a pool, and now you're in the middle of the ocean during a storm. You need more than just redirect your thoughts. You need crisis management. What does that mean? Mark pulled out his phone and showed me his notes app. When I went through my divorce, I hit a point like this. Everything I'd learned seemed useless. So my therapist had me create what she called a crisis protocol. Specific things to do when you're overwhelmed and the basic tools aren't enough. He started listing them. 1. Triage. You can't handle everything at once. What needs immediate attention? What can wait? Make a list, prioritize, and give yourself permission to let some things be imperfect or delayed. 2. Support system activation. Stop trying to handle this alone. Reach out to multiple people. Me, Pastor Sarah, your family, Maya, Jason, whoever. Don't just reach out once. Keep reaching out. 3. Physical intervention. When your thoughts are racing this badly, you need to interrupt them physically. Exercise, cold shower, going outside, anything that forces your body to engage. 4. Reduce decision load. You're trying to make too many decisions while overwhelmed. Postpone what you can. Simplify what you can't. 5. Give yourself grace. Stop judging yourself for struggling. This is a lot. Anyone would struggle with this. As he talked, I felt something shift. Not a magical fix, but a sense that maybe I wasn't completely helpless. Maybe I just needed different tools for this level of crisis. Let's start with triage, Mark said. What actually needs your attention right now versus what your mind is spinning about? We spent the next hour making lists, what actually needed immediate action, finishing the API security redesign decision by Friday, checking in on Maya, making sure my mum had support for her first oncology appointment. What could wait? The quarterly presentation prep, the team member management situation, most of the hypothetical disasters I was spinning about. See, Mark said, pointing to the lists, your mind is treating everything as equally urgent. But most of what you're spinning about isn't actually urgent. Some of it isn't even real. It's just hypothetical problems. He was right. Looking at it written out, maybe 30% of what I was overthinking actually required immediate attention. Now, support system. I'm here. Who else can you activate? Over the next hour, following Mark's guidance, I sent texts to Pastor Sarah, admitting I was struggling and needed help. To Jason, asking if he could take over a few of my tasks this week. To my dad, asking how he was doing and telling him I was here for whatever they needed. To Maya, just checking in. Then Mark made me go on a run with him. At 10 p.m. I didn't want to. My mind was screaming that I should be working, solving problems, thinking things through. But he literally pulled me off the couch. We ran for 30 minutes, and he was right. The physical activity interrupted the mental spiral. Not permanently, but enough to give me some relief. When we got back, sweaty and tired, my mind was quieter. Not silent, but manageable. Better? Mark asked. Yeah, actually yes. Still anxious, but not drowning. Good. Now here's what I want you to do tonight. No working, no problem solving. Just rest. Watch something mindless on TV. Go to bed early. Your brain needs a break from itself. But the API will still be there tomorrow, and you'll be better equipped to handle it if you're rested. Trust me. After he left, I followed his advice, watched a comedy special, went to bed at 10:30. My thoughts still raced, but less frantically, and eventually I slept. The next morning, I woke up still tired but clearer. I looked at the triage list Mark and I had made, the API security decision. That needed attention. I scheduled a focused 3-hour block to work through it with my team. No interruptions, no multitasking. And something interesting happened. With a clear boundary around the thinking time and knowing I'd triaged everything else, I could actually focus. My thoughts still wanted to jump to other worries, but I could redirect them. Not now. That's not urgent. Focus on this. By noon, we had a solid redesign plan. Not perfect, but good enough. And because I wasn't trying to make it perfect while simultaneously worrying about 12 other things, the decision-making was clearer. Steve stopped by my office afterward. "Daniel, I heard you've been having a rough week. Everything okay?" I almost said, "I'm fine," automatically. But something made me honest. It's been overwhelming. Multiple big things hit at once. Work stuff, family stuff. I'm managing it, but it's been hard. He nodded thoughtfully. "I appreciate you being honest, and I want you to know, we hired you as senior engineer knowing you're human. We don't expect you to handle everything perfectly all the time. If you need to delegate some things this week or push some deadlines, tell me. It's better to ask for help than to burn out." His words were a relief I didn't know I needed. Permission to not be perfect. Permission to need help. That evening, I went to the renewed mind group. I'd almost skipped again, feeling like a fraud, but I remembered what Mark said. Stop trying to handle this alone. When it was my turn to share, I was honest. I've had a really hard week. Multiple crises hit at once, and all my tools felt useless. I felt like I'd regressed completely, like I'd lost all my progress. And honestly, I felt like a fraud for co-leading this group when I was drowning in my own racing thoughts. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Angela spoke up. "Thank you for sharing that, because I've been having a hard week too, and I was sitting here thinking I'm the only one who struggles. Seeing you, someone I look up to, admit you're struggling too, it helps. It makes this feel more real, like maybe it's okay that I'm not perfect at this yet." Jennifer nodded. "I've been doing this work for 2 years, and I still have weeks like that, where everything old comes back and I feel like I never changed. But that's not regression, that's just being human under extraordinary pressure." Pastor Sarah added, "Daniel, I'm glad you came tonight, even though it was hard, because this is real. This is what this work looks like, not linear progress, but learning to manage setbacks, learning that having a hard week doesn't erase your growth, learning to ask for help when you need it." She was right. Coming to group while struggling was harder than coming when I was doing well, but it was also more important, because it showed, to me and to everyone else, that this practice wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, being honest, and using community to get through the hard times. After the meeting, Tyler approached me. "Daniel, can I tell you something? Last week I had a panic attack at work. Bad one. And I was about to text you for help, but then I thought, you probably have it all together now, you won't understand. But hearing you tonight, hearing that you still struggle, I wish I'd reached out. Can I next time? Please do. Any time, day or night. I mean that." Rachel, the lawyer, pulled me aside as people were leaving. "I went through exactly what you're describing, hit a point where I thought I'd figured it out, then everything fell apart, and I felt like I was back at square one. You know what my therapist told me? Progress isn't measured by not falling, it's measured by how you get back up." Her words stuck with me on the drive home. How you get back up. I'd fallen this week, fallen hard into old patterns of racing thoughts and overwhelming anxiety. But I'd gotten back up. I'd reached out to Mark. I'd used crisis tools. I'd been honest with Steve, with the group, with myself. I'd delegated. I'd rested. I'd shown up even when it was hard. That wasn't failure. That was progress. Maya called from Chicago that night. Her dad was doing better, recovering well. She'd be home in 3 days. "How are you?" she asked. "Better than I was, still overwhelmed, but managing it. I learned something this week, that I need different tools for crisis than I do for everyday stress. And that asking for help isn't weakness. I'm proud of you for not trying to handle everything alone." Over the weekend, I took Mark's advice and reduced my decision load. I ordered meal delivery instead of cooking. I postponed non-urgent work tasks. I let my apartment be messy. I said no to a social invitation that would have drained me, and I gave myself grace. Instead of beating myself up for struggling, I acknowledged, this is hard, Multiple major stresses at once would overwhelm anyone. Having racing thoughts doesn't mean I've failed. It means I'm human. By Monday, I felt more stable. Not perfect, not fully recovered, but functional. The API project was on track. My mum's oncology appointment had gone well. Treatment plan looked promising. Maya was coming home. The executive presentation was postponed 2 weeks, which gave me breathing room. At work, Jason stopped by. "Hey, thanks for delegating those tasks last week, but also, are you okay? You seemed really stressed." I was. Still am a bit, but I'm managing it. And Jason, I want you to know, if you ever hit a point where you're overwhelmed and the tools aren't enough, that's okay. It doesn't mean you've failed. It means you need to level up your support system and your strategies. That's what I learned this week. "That helps," he said. "I've been worried that if I'm still struggling sometimes, it means I'm not really getting better." No, getting better doesn't mean never struggling. It means knowing what to do when you struggle. It means having people to reach out to. It means giving yourself grace. That evening, I updated my journal with the most honest entry I'd written in weeks. This week almost broke me. I felt like I'd lost all my progress, like everything I'd learned was useless. But I was wrong. I hadn't lost my progress. I just encountered a level of stress that required more than my basic tools. What I learned: there's a difference between everyday thought management and crisis management. Redirecting thoughts works for normal stress, but when everything hits at once, you need triage, support activation, physical intervention, decision reduction, and grace. More importantly, I learned that setbacks don't erase growth. Having a hard week doesn't mean I'm back at square one. It means I'm human, facing human limitations, and that's okay. I also learned something profound about community. I almost skipped group because I felt like a fraud. But showing up while struggling, being honest about the mess I was in, that helped others more than showing up with it all together ever could. Because people don't need perfect examples. They need honest companions on the journey. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. This week, my thoughts ran harder and faster than they had in months, but I still found direction. Not through my own strength, but through reaching out, through being honest, through letting others help me. Direction doesn't always mean I redirect my own thoughts. Sometimes it means letting others help redirect me when I can't do it alone. I'm not where I want to be yet. I'm still recovering from this week. My thoughts still race more than they did a month ago, but I'm not where I was 3 months ago either. I have tools, I have community. I have someone who brings direction even when I'm drowning. And maybe most importantly, I learned that I can fall hard and still get back up. That's not failure, that's resilience, and that's worth celebrating. I closed the journal and felt something I hadn't felt all week. Hope. Not the naive hope that everything would be easy, but the deeper hope that I could handle hard things, that I could fall and get back up, that I had people who would help me when I couldn't help myself. My thoughts still ran. They probably always would. But I was learning, slowly, imperfectly, with setbacks along the way, that I didn't have to navigate them alone, and that made all the difference. 4 months into this journey, I learned that recovery from setback isn't just about getting back to where you were, it's about integrating what you learned from falling. The week after my crisis, I was still fragile. My thoughts raced more easily than they had a month ago. Sleep was still difficult. I caught myself spiraling multiple times a day. But something was different. I wasn't panicking about the panic. I wasn't catastrophizing about the catastrophizing. I'd learned something crucial from that hard week. Setbacks were part of the process, not evidence of failure. Maya came home from Chicago on a Wednesday evening. I picked her up from the airport, and she immediately noticed the dark circles under my eyes, the tension in my shoulders. "You look exhausted," she said, hugging me. "I am, but I'm okay, better than I was last week." At my apartment, I told her everything: the overwhelming week, the feeling of drowning, Mark's intervention, the crisis protocol, showing up at group while struggling. She listened without interrupting, just holding my hand. "I'm sorry I wasn't here," she said when I finished. "Don't be. Your dad needed you, and honestly, I needed to learn that I could handle a crisis without you. Not that I want to, but knowing I can, that matters. How's your mum? Good, actually. The oncologist is optimistic. Early stage, very treatable. She starts treatment next month, but the prognosis is excellent. And the API project? On track. We made the security redesign decision. It's solid. Not perfect, but solid. I'm learning to be okay with good enough instead of perfect. She smiled. That's growth. Over the next few days, I practiced something Mark had taught me during the crisis. Gentleness with myself. When my thoughts started racing, instead of getting frustrated or trying to force them to stop, I'd acknowledge them. Yes, I know you're worried about this. I hear you. But we've thought about this enough for now. It was like talking to a scared child instead of fighting an enemy. And surprisingly, it worked better than force ever had. At the next Tuesday Renewed Mind group, Pastor Sarah opened with a new teaching. I want to talk about what happens after a setback. Because many of you have experienced this. You're making progress, then something happens, and old patterns come back. And you feel like you've lost everything. But that's not what's happening. She drew a spiral on the whiteboard. Progress isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. Sometimes you come back to familiar struggles, but you're not at the same place you were before. You're at a higher level of the spiral. You have more tools, more awareness, more community. The struggle looks similar, but you're not the same person facing it. I felt tears in my eyes. That was exactly what I needed to hear. Yes, I'd struggled last week. Yes, racing thoughts had come back hard, but I wasn't the same person who'd first struggled with them 4 months ago. I'd reached out instead of drowning alone. I'd used crisis tools. I'd been honest. I'd gotten back up. After her teaching, Pastor Sarah asked if anyone wanted to share. I raised my hand. I want to talk about last week, about how I felt like I'd failed because my racing thoughts came back so strong. But this week, I'm realizing I didn't fail. I just hit a level of stress that required different tools, and I used them. I reached out. I was honest. I kept showing up even when it was hard. That's not failure. That's growth. Angela nodded vigorously. That helps me so much, because I had a hard few days this week and I felt like I'd lost all my progress. But hearing you say it's part of the spiral, not evidence of failure, that changes how I see it. A new woman I hadn't met before, probably in her 50s, spoke up. I'm Beth. This is my first time here. And honestly, I almost didn't come because I thought everyone here would have it all figured out. But hearing you talk about struggling, about setbacks being normal, that makes me feel like maybe I belong here. You absolutely belong here, I said. None of us have it figured out. We're all just learning together how to manage our racing thoughts. Some of us are a little further along, but we all still struggle. After the meeting, Tyler pulled me aside. Daniel, I need to tell you something. 2 weeks ago, I had a really bad day. My thoughts were spiraling, and I almost gave up on trying to manage them. But then I remembered what you'd said about reaching out, so I texted you even though it was late. I remembered. He'd texted at 11 p.m. You're spiraling about a mistake he'd made at work. I'd talked him through it, helped him redirect his thoughts. That conversation saved me, he continued, not just from that spiral, but from giving up on this whole process. And I want you to know, the fact that you were willing to help, even when you were struggling yourself, that mattered. It showed me this is real. His words hit me hard. During my crisis week, I'd felt like such a fraud for trying to help others while drowning myself. But Tyler was saying that my willingness to help, even while struggling, was actually meaningful. Maybe more meaningful than helping while I had it all together. At work, the team member Steve had asked me to manage. A developer named Priya was clearly struggling. She reminded me of myself, working long hours, checking and rechecking everything, looking exhausted, constantly apologizing. I asked her to grab coffee. Priya, I've noticed you seem stressed. Want to talk about it? She looked surprised, then relieved. I feel like I'm drowning. I can't stop thinking about work. Every night I lie awake replaying code, finding problems that might not exist. and I'm terrified I'm going to miss something important and let everyone down. I recognize the pattern immediately. Can I share something with you? I struggle with the exact same thing. Racing thoughts, constant overthinking, mental exhaustion, and I've been learning how to manage it. And over the next hour, I shared my journey, not just the progress, but the struggles, the setback I'd just had, the tools that worked and the times they didn't, the importance of community and asking for help. So you're saying, I'm not broken? She asked quietly. You're not broken. Your brain is wired to think deeply, to analyze, to consider every angle. That's actually a strength in a developer. But you have to learn to direct it instead of letting it run wild. And you have to learn the difference between productive thinking and anxious spinning. Can you teach me? Like, not just tell me about it, but actually help me learn? Absolutely. Let's meet weekly. I'll share what's worked for me. And Priya, you're not alone in this. There are a lot of us learning to manage racing thoughts. It's more common than you think. That evening, Maya and I cooked dinner together. Her first night really back. Both of us in my kitchen, music playing, just being present with each other. You seem lighter, she observed. Last week you were so heavy, so weighed down. What changed? I stopped fighting the setback, stopped seeing it as evidence I'd failed, started seeing it as part of the process, and that shift from I've failed to this is part of learning, it changed everything. I'm proud of you, not just for the progress, but for how you handled the setback. A lot of people would have given up, decided it wasn't working, but you kept going. I almost did give up. That first night when everything felt useless, I was ready to quit. But Mark showed up, and the group showed up, and you were there even from Chicago. I couldn't have done this alone. She squeezed my hand. That's the whole point, though. You're not supposed to do it alone. That's what you've been learning, that community isn't optional, it's essential. The next day, I had my quarterly executive presentation, the one I'd been catastrophizing about during my crisis week. But now, with some distance and better mental management, I could see it clearly. It was just a presentation. Important, yes. Worth preparing for, absolutely, but not worth weeks of mental torture. I prepared thoughtfully, created a solid deck, practiced my talking points, anticipated likely questions. But I didn't over-prepare. I didn't rehearse it 17 times. I didn't spiral about every possible thing that could go wrong. The presentation went well. Not perfect. I stumbled on one slide, didn't have an immediate answer to one question, but well. And afterward, instead of replaying every moment looking for mistakes, I consciously chose to let it go. Steve found me afterward. Great presentation, the executives were impressed. Thanks, I'm glad it went well. You know what I noticed? You were confident but not anxious. A few months ago, you would have been a nervous wreck for something like this. But today you were solid. What changed? I thought about how to answer. I learned that I don't have to be perfect, that I can prepare well without over-preparing. That spiraling about every possible thing that could go wrong doesn't actually prevent things from going wrong. It just exhausts me beforehand. He nodded thoughtfully. That's mature wisdom. And it's something I wish more of our team understood. We have a culture of anxiety here sometimes, people thinking they need to be stressed and overworked to be good at their jobs. But you're showing that's not true. You can be excellent without being anxious. His observation struck me. I'd thought my journey was just personal, learning to manage my own racing thoughts for my own mental health. But it was affecting how I worked, how I led, and potentially how others saw their own relationships with work and anxiety. That weekend, Mark invited me to a men's breakfast at church, something separate from the renewed mind group, just a gathering of guys who wanted to talk about faith and life. I almost declined, feeling like I'd maxed out my social capacity for the week, but something made me say yes. There were about 20 men there, ranging from college age to retirement. After breakfast, the leader asked if anyone had anything they wanted to share or pray about. I found myself raising my hand. I'm Daniel, and I want to share something I've been learning. I struggle with racing thoughts. My mind just goes and goes, analyzing everything, worrying about everything. And 4 months ago, I heard God say something that changed my life. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I shared my journey, the bathroom moment, learning to redirect thoughts, the community support, the recent setback, the recovery. As I talked, I noticed several men nodding, their faces showing recognition. When I finished, an older man, probably in his 60s, spoke up. "Thank you for sharing that. I've struggled with racing thoughts my entire life, 67 years, and I always thought it was just how I was, something I had to live with. But hearing you talk about learning to direct them instead of just enduring them, that gives me hope that maybe I can still learn." A younger guy, maybe early 20s, added, "I thought I was the only one. Everyone around me seems so calm, so together. But my mind is chaos. It's good to know I'm not alone." After the breakfast, several men approached me asking about the renewed mind group, about the tools I'd learned, about how to start managing racing thoughts. I gave them information, invited them to group, offered to grab coffee. Driving home, I felt overwhelmed, but in a good way. I'd thought my struggle with racing thoughts was this private, shameful thing, but it turned out so many people dealt with it. And being willing to share my struggle openly was creating space for others to acknowledge theirs. That evening, I video called my parents. My mom was preparing for her first chemo treatment the following week, and I wanted to check in. "How are you feeling about it?" I asked. "Nervous, but ready. The doctor is confident about the treatment plan." She paused. "Daniel, your father told me about what you've been going through. The anxiety, the racing thoughts. I didn't know you were struggling with that. I didn't want to worry you. Honey, I'm your mother. I want to know these things, but also, I think I might struggle with the same thing. I've always had a mind that doesn't stop, constantly worrying, constantly planning, constantly analyzing. I just thought that was normal. It is normal for people with brains like ours, but it doesn't have to control us. We can learn to manage it." We talked for an hour about what I'd been learning. She asked questions, took notes. By the end, she said, "I think I need to find a group like yours, or maybe see a therapist, because I don't want to spend the rest of my life drowning in my own thoughts." Mom, that's huge. That awareness, that willingness to get help, that's everything. After we hung up, I sat with the realization that my journey wasn't just affecting me. It was rippling out to Jason, to Angela, to Tyler, to Priya, to men at breakfast, to my own mother. By being willing to be honest about my struggle and my growth, I was creating space for others to do the same. At the next renewed mind group, Pastor Sarah announced that they were starting a second weekly meeting. The group had grown too large for one session, and she asked if I'd be willing to co-lead the second group with her. "I know you had a setback recently," she said, "and honestly, that makes you more qualified, not less, because you know what it's like to fall and get back up. And that's what people need to see." I agreed, and as I left that night, I reflected on how different my life looked 4 months after that desperate prayer in my bathroom. I wasn't cured. My thoughts still raced. I still had hard days. I'd just had a major setback, but I was different. I had tools, I had community, I had purpose in my pain. I had learned to direct my racing thoughts instead of just enduring them, and I was using what I'd learned to help others do the same. That night I journaled, 4 months ago I prayed desperately for help with my racing thoughts, and God answered, not by making the thoughts stop, but by teaching me to direct them. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I'm learning that direction doesn't mean I never struggle. It means I know what to do when I struggle. It means I have tools for everyday stress and different tools for crisis. It means I have community to support me when I fall. It means I can be honest about the struggle instead of pretending I have it all together. Last week's setback taught me something crucial. Setbacks aren't failure. They're part of the spiral of growth. I came back to familiar struggles, but I wasn't the same person facing them. I had more tools, more awareness, more community, and I got back up. Now I'm watching my struggle become useful for others. Jason, Priya, Tyler, Angela, the men at breakfast, my own mother, all of them seeing that racing thoughts don't have to be a life sentence, that there's another way to live, not perfect, not struggle-free, but directed instead of drowning. My thoughts still run. They probably always will, but I'm learning to direct them. And increasingly, I'm learning that my struggle isn't just about me. It's about everyone who's drowning in their own racing thoughts, wondering if there's hope. And by being honest about my journey, including the setbacks, I'm showing them there is. That's purpose in pain. That's redemption. That's what it means for God to bring direction to racing thoughts. I closed the journal and felt deep gratitude. Not gratitude that the struggle was easy, but gratitude that the struggle had meaning, that I wasn't walking this path alone, that my racing thoughts, which had once been my greatest weakness, were becoming a source of strength for me and for others. The journey was far from over. I'd have more setbacks, more hard days, more moments of feeling overwhelmed, but I wasn't afraid of them anymore, because I knew I could fall and get back up. I knew I wasn't alone. I knew God brought direction even when my thoughts ran wild. And that was enough. 5 months into this journey, I learned that transformation isn't about reaching a destination where racing thoughts disappear. It's about building a life where you can thrive, even with them. The second Renewed Mind group launched on Thursday evenings. Pastor Sarah and I co-led it, and 12 people showed up the first night. Some were overflow from the Tuesday group, but several were new, people who'd heard about it from friends, co-workers, family members. Among them was someone I didn't expect, my mother. She'd flown in from Denver for her second round of chemo, and she was staying with me for the week. When I mentioned I was leading the Thursday group, she asked if she could come. "Are you sure?" I asked. "You've been through a lot this week. You might want to rest." "I want to come. I need to learn this, Daniel. I've spent 70 years letting my thoughts run wild, and I'm tired. If you can learn to manage it, maybe I can too." Having my mom in the group was surreal. Here was the woman who'd raised me, who'd always seemed so together, so capable, sitting in a circle admitting she struggled with racing thoughts. It made me see her differently, more human, more real. During check-in, she introduced herself. "I'm Patricia, I'm Daniel's mother," which feels a bit strange since he's co-leading this group. "But I'm here because I've struggled with anxiety and overthinking my entire life. I just never had words for it, or knew it was something I could manage differently." Over the next 90 minutes, we covered the basics: the pause, the redirect, the release, the difference between productive thinking and anxious rumination, the importance of recognizing when thoughts are running versus when they're directed. My mum took notes like she was in a college lecture. Afterward, as we drove home, she said, "I had no idea. I thought my constant worrying was just being a good mother, being responsible. I didn't realize it was anxiety disguised as conscientiousness." That's exactly what I thought about my overthinking, that it made me a better developer, more thorough. But really, it was just exhausting me. Do you think I can change? At my age? Mom, there was a guy at the men's breakfast who's 67. He said the same thing. And you know what? He's been coming to the Tuesday group for 3 weeks now, and he told me he's already seeing changes. It's never too late. Over the next few days, I watched my mom practice what she'd learned. When I'd see her getting that worried look, that faraway expression that meant her thoughts were spinning, I'd gently ask, "Where are your thoughts right now?" She'd pause, become aware, worrying about the chemo, about whether it's working, about what the next scan will show. "Are those thoughts helping you right now?" "No, they're just making me anxious. Can you redirect them?" And she would. It wasn't perfect, and sometimes she couldn't, but she was trying. And watching her try, watching her apply these tools at 70 years old while going through cancer treatment, it was one of the most inspiring things I'd ever witnessed. At work, the API project launched successfully. No major issues, positive feedback from users, and the security redesign held up perfectly. Steve pulled me aside after the launch meeting. "Daniel, I want to talk to you about something. The executive team has been impressed with you. Not just your technical work, but your leadership. The way you managed Priya, mentored Jason, handled pressure during the crisis. They want to offer you a path to engineering manager." My immediate reaction was a flood of thoughts. What if I'm not ready? What if I fail as a manager? What if the added responsibility brings back the overwhelming anxiety? What if I can't handle it? What if... I caught myself. My thoughts were running. Time to redirect. Can I think about it? I asked. It's a big decision. Of course, take your time. That evening, I talked it through with Maya, with Mark, and in my journal. I made the lists. What excited me about the opportunity, what scared me, what I'd need to do differently to succeed. But more importantly, I recognized the pattern. My racing thoughts wanted to catastrophize, to spin out worst-case scenarios, to convince me I wasn't ready. That was the old pattern. The new pattern was to acknowledge those thoughts without letting them control the decision. After 3 days of thoughtful consideration, not anxious spinning but genuine reflection, I accepted the position. Not because I was certain I'd succeed, but because I was willing to try, because I had tools to manage the pressure, because I knew I could handle setbacks. The Thursday group became a highlight of my week. Watching people learn the tools, seeing their faces light up when something clicked, hearing their stories of small victories, it reminded me why this work mattered. One week, a man named Robert shared a breakthrough. I was stuck in traffic, and I felt my thoughts starting to spiral, about being late, about my boss being mad, about losing my job, and I caught it. I actually laughed at myself in the car, because I could see how ridiculous the spiral was. I was predicting a whole disaster from being 10 minutes late, so I redirected, texted my boss I'd be late, put on a podcast, and just drove. And you know what? When I got to work, no one cared that I was late. The group celebrated with him, because that's what it looked like, catching the spiral before it took over, redirecting and discovering the catastrophe was just in your head. Angela, who'd been coming for 2 months now, shared her own victory. I sent an email at work, and I didn't reread it 17 times. I read it once, made sure it was clear, and hit send. And I didn't spend the next hour anxious about whether I'd said the right thing. I just let it go. My mom smiled. That's exactly what I need to learn. I'll spend hours replaying conversations, wondering if I said the wrong thing. It's exhausting. It is exhausting, I agreed. And the thing is, all that replaying doesn't actually help. If you said something wrong, replaying it doesn't fix it. It just tortures you. After the group that night, Priya approached me. Daniel, I wanted to tell you, the weekly meetings we've been having, they're changing my life. I'm sleeping better. I'm less anxious at work. I can actually focus now instead of just spinning. That's amazing. What's been most helpful? Learning the difference between being thorough and being obsessive. I always thought I needed to be obsessive to be good at my job, but you've shown me I can be excellent without torturing myself. That's been huge. Her words reminded me of my conversation with Steve months ago. This was a cultural shift, not just a personal one. The idea that you could be excellent without being anxious. It was spreading. That weekend, Maya and I took a trip to a cabin in the hill country. Just us. No work, minimal phone checking, just being present with each other. On Saturday morning, sitting on the porch with coffee, she said, "Can I tell you something? I almost broke up with you 5 months ago." I looked at her, surprised. Really? Really? You were so trapped in your head, so unavailable, even when you were physically present. I loved you, but I was lonely. I felt like I was in a relationship with your racing thoughts, not with you. I didn't realize it was that bad. You couldn't, because you were drowning in your own mind. But Daniel, you're different now. You're here, actually here, and that's changed everything for us. I still have racing thoughts. I still catch myself spiraling sometimes. I know, but you manage them now. You redirect them. You don't let them consume you. And that means I get to actually be with you, not just near you. Her words hit deep. My journey with racing thoughts hadn't just been about my mental health. It had affected my relationship, my work, my entire life. Learning to direct my thoughts instead of drowning in them had changed everything. That evening, as we watched the sunset, I felt my thoughts starting to race. About work things I needed to do, about the new manager role, about my mum's treatment. about a dozen other things, but I caught them. "Not now," I said quietly. "Right now I'm here, watching the sunset with Maya. That's where my attention belongs." And my thoughts listened. They settled, not permanently, but for that moment. And that moment was enough. Back in Austin, I had my first official meeting as an engineering manager. The transition felt significant, not just a title change, but a role change. I was responsible for people now, not just code. In my first one-on-one with Jason, he asked, "So how are you feeling about the new role?" "Nervous, a little, but mostly excited. And I have tools now for managing the anxiety that comes with new responsibilities. That makes a big difference. Can I tell you something? You becoming my manager actually makes me less anxious, because I know you get it. You understand the mental stuff, the overthinking, the racing thoughts. I don't have to pretend I have it all together with you." His words highlighted something important. My willingness to be open about my struggle created psychological safety for others. They didn't have to hide their own struggles. They could be human. At the Tuesday Renewed Mind group, the original one I'd been attending, Pastor Sarah made an announcement. "We're going to do something different next week. Instead of our regular format, we're going to have testimonies, people sharing their full journeys, where they started, what they've learned, where they are now. It's helpful to hear complete stories, not just weekly updates." She asked if I'd be willing to share mine. I agreed, though the thought made me nervous. Sharing pieces of my journey was one thing. Sharing the whole arc, including the bathroom moment, the setbacks, the ongoing struggles, felt vulnerable. The following Tuesday, I stood in front of the group and told my story. From the beginning, lying awake at 3 a.m., drowning in racing thoughts, feeling like a prisoner in my own mind, the desperate prayer, the words I'd heard, "Your thoughts run, but I bring direction." I talked about learning the tools, the early victories, the growing confidence. But I also talked about the setback, the week where everything fell apart, feeling like a fraud, the recovery, the deeper learning, the realization that setbacks were part of the spiral, not evidence of failure. 5 months ago, I thought my racing thoughts were just who I was, I said. Something I'd have to live with forever, and in a way that's true. My thoughts still race, but I'm not drowning in them anymore. I've learned to direct them, to catch them when they start spiraling, to redirect them toward what's productive and release what's not. And the crazy thing is, this journey that started with my own desperate need has become something bigger. I'm co-leading 2 groups now. I'm mentoring people at work. My own mother is learning these tools. My struggle has become useful for others. That's what happens when God brings direction to our racing thoughts, not just personal healing, but ripples that spread to everyone around us. After I finished, several people thanked me, but it was Beth, the 50-something woman who'd almost not come because she thought everyone had it figured out, who said something that stuck with me. "Thank you for being so honest about the setback, about feeling like a fraud, about the ongoing struggle, because that's what I needed to hear. Not that you've arrived, but that you're still on the journey and it's still worth it." That night, driving home, I thought about Beth's words. People didn't need me to be perfect. They needed me to be honest, to show that transformation was possible without being complete, to demonstrate that you could make real progress while still struggling sometimes. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Tyler. "Had a massive spiral today, used the crisis protocol, called Mark, went for a run, redirected successfully. Just wanted to say thank you for showing me this is possible." I smiled. This was it. This was what it meant for God to bring direction to racing thoughts. Not just my thoughts, but a whole community learning together. Not just managing symptoms, but changing lives. Later that week, my mom called from Denver. "Daniel, I wanted to tell you, I found a therapist who specializes in anxiety and thought patterns, and I joined a group at my church similar to your Renewed Mind group. I'm doing the work." "Mom, that's amazing." "It is, and it's hard. But I'm 70 years old. going through cancer treatment, and I'm finally learning to manage my racing thoughts. If I can do it, anyone can." Her words carried weight. Here was a woman who'd lived 7 decades with racing thoughts, who'd raised children while drowning in overthinking, who'd built a successful career while her mind constantly spun, and she was still choosing to learn, to grow, to change. If she could do it, anyone could. That night I updated my journal. 5 months in, and I'm seeing the full picture now. This journey isn't about reaching a place where my thoughts never race. It's about building a life where I can thrive even when they do. I'm an engineering manager now. More responsibility, more pressure, more decisions. And yes, my thoughts try to spiral about it. But I catch them. I redirect them. I use my tools. I reach out when I need help. I give myself grace when I struggle. I'm co-leading 2 groups, mentoring multiple people, showing others that racing thoughts don't have to be a life sentence. My mom is learning these tools at 70. Maya and I are closer than we've ever been because I'm actually present with her. My work is better because I'm not exhausting myself with overthinking. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. This phrase has become more than just words I heard in a desperate moment. It's become a practice, a way of life, a lens through which I see everything. My thoughts still run. They ran today, multiple times. They'll run tomorrow, but I know what to do with them now. I know how to catch them, redirect them, release them. I know when to handle them myself and when to reach out for help. I know that setbacks are part of the journey, not evidence of failure. Most importantly, I know I'm not alone. I have community, people who understand, who support, who walk this path with me. And I get to be that for others now. My struggle has become my strength. My pain has purpose. That's what it looks like when God brings direction to racing thoughts. Not elimination, but navigation. Not perfection, but progress. Not drowning, but swimming. I closed the journal and felt that familiar sense of gratitude. Not gratitude that everything was easy, but gratitude that the struggle had meaning. That I'd found a way to live well even with racing thoughts. That I wasn't walking this path alone. The journey continued. There would be more challenges, more setbacks, more moments of struggle, but I was ready for them, because I had direction now. And that changed everything. 6 months after that desperate prayer in my bathroom at 3 a.m., I found myself back in that same space. Not in crisis, but in reflection. It was a Saturday morning. Maya was still asleep. I'd woken up early, not from racing thoughts, but from simply waking naturally. I stood in the bathroom, looking at myself in the mirror, and I remembered that night. How desperate I'd been, how exhausted, how trapped in my own mind. The person looking back at me now was different, not perfect, not free from racing thoughts, but fundamentally changed. My phone buzzed, a text from Jason. "Hey, I know it's early, but I'm spiraling about the code review Monday. Can we talk?" 6 months ago, getting a text like this would have sent me into my own spiral, analyzing his problem, taking on his anxiety, overthinking how to help. Now, I just responded, "Of course, coffee at 10? I went for a run, something that had become a regular practice. Not because I loved running, but because I'd learned that physical activity helped channel mental energy. As I ran through the quiet Austin streets, I noticed my thoughts, trying to jump ahead to the day's tasks, to next week's challenges, to hypothetical problems. But I caught them. Not now. Right now I'm just running. And they settled. Not permanently. They'd try again in a few minutes. But for now, they listened. Back home, I made coffee and sat on the balcony, watching the city wake up. Maya joined me, wrapping a blanket around herself. "You're up early," she said, kissing my cheek. "Couldn't sleep, but in a good way, just awake, clear-headed. That's new. 6 months ago, couldn't sleep meant you were drowning in racing thoughts." "I know. That's what I was thinking about. How different everything is now." She smiled. "You want to know what I notice most? You're present, like really present. Right now you're here with me, watching the morning, drinking coffee, not thinking about work or problems or what-ifs. Just here." She was right. My thoughts weren't racing ahead or replaying the past. They were here, in this moment. That had become possible. Not easy, not automatic, but possible. Later that morning, I met Jason at a coffee shop. He looked tired, stressed, the way I'd looked so many times 6 months ago. "Tell me what's going on," I said. "I have this code review Monday, and my brain won't stop going through every possible criticism they might have, every bug they might find, every way I might look incompetent. I can't sleep, can't focus, just spinning." I recognized it completely. "Okay, let's walk through this. First question, have you actually reviewed the code yourself? Done due diligence?" "Yeah, multiple times. I think it's solid." "So you've done your part. You've been thorough. Now you're just looping, going through the same worries without gaining new information. That's the sign you need to redirect." "But what if I actually did miss something?" "Then they'll catch it in the review. That's literally what code reviews are for. And if they find something, you'll fix it. That's not a disaster. That's the process working as intended." I watched his shoulders drop slightly. "I guess I'm treating every potential bug like it's a catastrophe." "That's catastrophizing. Your thoughts are running wild, creating disasters that haven't happened and might never happen. You need to redirect them to what's actually true. You've done good work, you've reviewed it carefully, and whatever happens in the review, you can handle it." We spent an hour walking through the tools, the pause, the redirect, the release. By the end, he looked lighter. "Thank you. I don't know what I'd do without these check-ins." "You'd figure it out. You're learning the tools. Eventually, you won't need me to walk you through them. You'll do it yourself. I hope so. But for now, I'm glad you're here." After he left, I reflected on how natural it had become to help others with this. 6 months ago, I'd been drowning myself. Now, helping others manage their racing thoughts was just part of my life. Not a burden, but a privilege. That afternoon, I had a video call with my parents. My mom had just finished her 4th round of chemo and was feeling optimistic. The scans looked good. The treatment was working. "How are you doing with the thought management stuff?" I asked. "Better. Not perfect, but better. I still catch myself spiraling sometimes, worrying about test results, catastrophizing about the cancer coming back. But I'm getting faster at recognizing it. And I'm using the tools you taught me." "That's huge, Mom." "It is. And Daniel, I want to thank you. If you hadn't gone through your own struggle with this, hadn't learned these tools and shared them, I'd still be drowning in my own anxious thoughts. Your pain has blessed me." Her words made my eyes water. 6 months ago, I'd seen my racing thoughts as just a curse, something to overcome. But she was right. My struggle had become a blessing for others. Not because the struggle itself was good, but because I'd been willing to learn from it and share what I learned. That evening was the Thursday Renewed Mind group. As people filed in, I noticed how diverse the group had become. Young and old, tech workers and teachers, men and women, people of different backgrounds, all united by the common struggle of racing thoughts. Beth, who'd almost not come 6 weeks ago because she thought everyone had it figured out, volunteered to share her testimony that night. She talked about 53 years of racing thoughts, of feeling like a prisoner in her own mind, of finally learning there was another way. "I'm not cured," she said. "My thoughts still race, but I'm not drowning anymore. I have tools, I have community, I have hope, and that changes everything." After she finished, a new person, a college student named Alex, raised his hand. "I'm new here, and honestly, I'm skeptical. I've had racing thoughts my whole life. Tried everything. Therapy, medication, meditation. Nothing's really worked. Why would this be different?" I appreciated his honesty. It might not be different. These tools aren't magic, but here's what I've learned. Racing thoughts aren't the enemy. They're not something to eliminate or cure. They're just how some of our brains work. The question isn't, how do I stop thinking? It's, how do I direct my thoughts instead of letting them run wild? "But how?" he asked, frustration in his voice. "Everyone says just redirect or just let it go, like it's easy. It's not easy." "You're right, it's not easy. It's a practice, like learning an instrument or a sport. At first, it feels impossible. You try to redirect, and your thoughts come right back. You try to let go and you just grip tighter, but you practice every day, multiple times a day, and slowly, very slowly, you get better at it. Pastor Sarah added, "And Alex, you don't do it alone. That's why we're here. Community isn't optional, it's essential. When you can't redirect your own thoughts, someone else can help you. When you're drowning, someone else can throw you a rope." My mom spoke up. She'd been coming to the Thursday group consistently. "I'm 70 years old. I've had racing thoughts for literally 5 decades, and I'm still learning. It's hard. Some days I feel like I'm making no progress. But then I'll have a moment where I catch my thoughts spiraling and redirect them, and I realize I'm actually getting better. Slowly, but really." After the group, Alex approached me. "Can I ask you something? Do you ever get tired of this? Of constantly having to manage your thoughts?" "Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes I wish my brain just worked differently, that thoughts didn't race constantly. But this is my brain. These are my thoughts. And I've learned I can have a good life even with racing thoughts. I can do meaningful work, have great relationships, help others, all while managing this. It's part of who I am, not something that has to stop me." He nodded thoughtfully. "That helps. I've been waiting to be fixed before I could really live, but maybe I don't need to be fixed. Maybe I just need to learn to navigate differently." "Exactly. That's exactly it." The following Tuesday, I was scheduled to give a presentation at work to the entire engineering organization, about 100 people, on building healthy team cultures. Steve had asked me specifically because of the changes he'd seen in me and my team. Old Daniel would have spent weeks catastrophizing about this presentation, racing through every possible question, every way it could go wrong, every criticism I might face. He would have rehearsed it 50 times, second-guessed every slide, and still shown up anxious and exhausted. New Daniel prepared thoughtfully, made good slides, practiced enough to be comfortable, and then let it go. Trusted that the preparation was sufficient. The morning of the presentation, I felt my thoughts trying to race. What if I forget something? What if someone asks a question I can't answer? What if they think I'm unqualified to speak about this? But I caught them. I've prepared. I know this material. Whatever happens, I can handle it. The presentation went well, not perfect. I stumbled over one point, didn't have a perfect answer to one question, but well. And afterward, instead of replaying every moment looking for mistakes, I consciously let it go. Several people approached me afterward. One senior engineer said, "That was great. But more than the content, I appreciated your honesty about your own struggle with anxiety and overthinking. It made the whole thing feel real, not just theoretical." Another person, a woman I didn't know well, said, "I've been struggling with racing thoughts for years. I had no idea other people dealt with this too. Can you tell me about that group you mentioned?" I gave her information about Renewed Mind, watched her face light up with hope. This was why Steve had asked me to present, not just to share information about team culture, but to show that vulnerability and honesty could change culture. That weekend, Maya and I went back to the park where we'd had our first date 3 years ago. We walked the same paths, sat at the same bench, remembered who we'd been back then. "You were so anxious that day," she said, laughing. "You kept apologizing for everything. I thought you might be too nervous to actually enjoy the date." I was dying inside. My thoughts were racing non-stop. Did I say the right thing? Does she think I'm boring? What if she never wants to see me again? And look at us now, 3 years later, and you're actually able to be present on a date instead of drowning in your own head. "It took almost breaking up with me for me to get help," I pointed out. "True, but you got help. You did the work, and now we have this." She gestured between us. This relationship that actually works because both people can be present in it. As we sat there, I felt my thoughts trying to jump ahead, to the future, to what came next, to all the things we needed to do. But I redirected them. "Right now, I'm just here, with you. That's enough." And it was. That evening, I opened my journal for what I knew would be an important entry. 6 months, half a year since that desperate prayer. 6 months ago, I stood in my bathroom at 3 a.m., drowning in my own racing thoughts. I prayed desperately, "God help me, I can't do this anymore." And he answered, not with a cure, not by making the thoughts stop, but with words that changed everything. "Your thoughts run, but I bring direction." These 6 months have been a journey of learning what that means, not just intellectually, but practically, living it. Practicing it, failing at it, getting back up and trying again. I've learned that racing thoughts aren't the enemy. They're just how my brain works. The enemy is letting them run wild without direction, letting them control me instead of learning to direct them. I've learned the tools, the pause, stopping to ask if thoughts are true, helpful, necessary, the redirect, consciously choosing where to point my mental energy. The release, letting go of thoughts I can't do anything about, crisis protocols for when basic tools aren't enough, the importance of community, of not walking this path alone. I've learned that progress isn't linear. I've had setbacks, days where I felt like I was back at square one, weeks where old patterns came back strong. But those setbacks didn't erase my progress. They were part of it. Learning to fall and get back up, that's growth too. I've watched my personal struggle become something bigger. Jason learning to manage his racing thoughts. Priya sleeping better, focusing better. Tyler reaching out instead of drowning alone. Angela sending emails without spiraling. My own mother, at 70, learning to manage thoughts that have plagued her for 5 decades. Maya and I building a relationship where I can actually be present. 2 renewed mind groups now, with dozens of people learning these tools. People at work seeing that you can be excellent without being anxious. Culture shifting, not just individual minds. I've become an engineering manager, more responsibility, more pressure, and I'm handling it. Not perfectly, but handling it. Using my tools, reaching out when I need help, giving myself grace when I struggle. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. This isn't just a phrase anymore. It's a practice, a way of life, a lens for everything. My thoughts still race. They race today, they'll race tomorrow, but I know what to do with them now. I know how to catch them when they start spiraling, how to redirect them toward what's productive, how to release what I can't control, how to sit with uncertainty without trying to think my way to certainty, how to use community when I can't do it alone. 6 months ago, I thought the goal was to stop having racing thoughts. Now I know the goal is to learn to live well even with them, to build a life where racing thoughts are part of who I am, but they don't define me or control me. I'm not at a destination. I'm on a journey. There will be more challenges, more setbacks, more moments of struggle. But I'm not afraid of them anymore, because I know I can handle them. I have tools, I have community, I have someone who brings direction when my thoughts want to just run wild. My racing thoughts, which were once my greatest weakness, have become a source of strength. Not because they've disappeared, but because I've learned to navigate them. And in learning to navigate them, I've been able to help others navigate theirs. That's redemption. That's purpose in pain. That's what it means when God brings direction to racing thoughts. I closed the journal and sat for a moment in the quiet. Then I did something I hadn't done in 6 months. I went back to that Notes app entry from the very beginning. The one I'd typed at 3 a.m. in my bathroom. Your thoughts run, but I bring direction. I added to it now. 6 months later, I understand. My thoughts still run, but they run with direction now. They run toward purpose, toward growth, toward helping others. They run, but they're not running wild. They're running somewhere. That's the difference. That's everything. The next Sunday, Pastor Sarah invited me to share a brief testimony at the main church service. Just 5 minutes, she said. Tell your story. Standing on stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I felt my thoughts trying to race, but I caught them, redirected them, and spoke from the heart. 6 months ago, I didn't think I'd ever have peace in my own mind. My thoughts raced constantly, analyzing, worrying, catastrophizing. I was exhausted all the time, drowning in my own head. And one night at 3 a.m., I cried out to God for help. He didn't take away my racing thoughts, but he gave me something better: direction. He taught me that I didn't need to stop thinking. I needed to learn to direct my thoughts, to catch them when they started running wild, to redirect them toward what was true and productive, to release what I couldn't control. If you're sitting here drowning in your own racing thoughts, wondering if there's hope, there is. Not hope that you'll be cured or fixed, or that your thoughts will stop, but hope that you can learn to navigate them, that you can build a good life even with racing thoughts, that you don't have to walk this path alone. Your thoughts run, but God brings direction. That's the promise, and it changes everything. After the service, at least a dozen people approached me. Some wanted information about renewed mind. Some just wanted to tell me they struggled too. One older man, probably in his 80s, said with tears in his eyes, "I've had racing thoughts my entire life, 83 years. I thought I just had to live with them, but maybe I can still learn." "You can," I said. "It's never too late." That evening, Maya and I cooked dinner together, one of our favorite rituals. As we chopped vegetables and stirred pots, I found myself fully present, not thinking about work, not worrying about tomorrow, not replaying today, just here with her in this moment. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, smiling at the irony. "I'm thinking about how far we've come, not just me, but us. 6 months ago, you almost broke up with me because I was so trapped in my head. Now I'm actually here. You are, and it's made all the difference." Later that night, lying in bed, I felt that familiar sense of thoughts wanting to race, about the week ahead, about responsibilities, about hypothetical problems. But I didn't fight them. I just acknowledged them. "I see you. I hear you. But right now, it's time to rest." And slowly, they settled. As I drifted off to sleep, I thought about that desperate prayer 6 months ago, how I'd felt so trapped, so hopeless, so exhausted by my own mind, how I'd cried out for help not knowing if anyone was listening. God had been listening. He'd answered, not by taking away my racing thoughts, but by teaching me to direct them, by giving me community to walk with, by showing me that my struggle could become a source of strength, not just for me, but for others. My thoughts still ran, they probably always would, but they ran with direction now, and that changed everything. If you've walked with me through this journey, I want to ask you something. Do your thoughts run? Do you know what it's like to be exhausted by your own mind? To feel trapped in endless analysis, worry and overthinking? There's hope. Not hope that you'll be fixed or cured, but hope that you can learn to direct your racing thoughts instead of drowning in them. Hope that you can build a good life even with a racing mind. Hope that you don't have to walk this path alone. Your thoughts run. But God brings direction. That's the promise I've lived for 6 months. And it's a promise available to you too. Reach out, find community, learn the tools, practice the redirect, give yourself grace, and most importantly, know that your racing thoughts don't have to control you. You can learn to direct them. It won't be easy, it won't be quick. You'll have setbacks, but it's worth it, so worth it. Because when your thoughts run with direction instead of running wild, everything changes. Your relationships improve, your work gets better, your peace increases, your life expands. You don't need your racing thoughts to disappear. You just need to learn to navigate them, and that's possible. I promise you that's possible. Your thoughts run, but God brings direction. It's time to learn what that means for you.